The raven's legs were thin as reeds, and the cord bit into them where it had been tied. Jon Snow steadied the bird with a gentleness that surprised men who had watched him swing steel into living flesh. Its heart hammered against his palm, a frantic drum that made the hall's silence feel like a held breath. Sansa Stark stood to his left, her hands folded, her knuckles pale. She did not look at the raven. She looked at the men who had gathered, the ones in wolfskin cloaks and the ones in boiled leather, the ones who had cheered when they named her brother king and the ones who had only nodded, slow and calculating, as if weighing the word against the cost. Davos Seaworth hovered close, like a man who kept in or ready in case the sea decided it was done with you. Brienne of Tarth stood behind Sansa as still as a carved pillar, her gaze moving in small, precise cuts from face to face. Tormund Giantsbane lounged nearer the hearth, a shaggy mountain with a cup in hand, pretending not to care while his eyes never left Jon's. Jon broke the seal. The wax snapped with a small, brittle sound that echoed too loudly. He unfolded the parchment and felt the faint grit of long travel, as if the message had scraped against salt and stone and storm. The writing was cramped, hurried, ink blotted by fingers that must have shaken. He read in his head first, and the words turned the air colder. Dragonglass, Dragonstone, mountains of it, Samwell Tarly wrote. Sam, who did not lie, who did not exaggerate, who had once nearly died in a night that smelled of rot and ice. Sam insisted the black glass could kill the dead. He insisted it was there, waiting, and that there was no time. Jon's throat tightened. He remembered Hardhome. Not the stories, not the screams he'd heard in sleep, but the look in the eyes of men who had accepted there would be no morning. The dead had moved like a tide that did not tire. Fire had bought minutes. Steel had bought nothing. He lifted his gaze and found the room watching him. They were not asking for news of harvests or squabbles or southern gossip. They were asking whether the world would end and when. It's from Samwell Tarly, Jon said. His voice sounded rougher than he meant, scraped by too many decisions. He says there's dragonglass on Dragonstone, enough to arm all the north, enough to... He hesitated because saying it made it real, enough to fight the dead. The words moved through the hall like a sudden gust. A few men made the sign of the seven out of old habit, then seemed embarrassed by it. Others spat into the rushes, as if they could spit the fear away. A lord with a gray beard, one of the Serwins, leaned forward on the table, eyes narrowed. Dragonstone is an island, the man said, as if naming it might keep it distant. Not ours. It doesn't belong to us, another agreed, a Karstark cousin with a mouth like a wound. It belongs to the Dragon Queen. Or the Lion Queen, someone else muttered. Too low for politeness but loud enough for danger. Davos cleared his throat, a soft cough that somehow carried. Begging pardon, my lords. Dragonstone belonged to House Baratheon not so long ago. It's been mostly empty since Stannis left it. There may be a few folk, but it isn't like taking Casterly Rock. Tormund snorted. Empty castles are traps. Giants know that. Jon kept his eyes on the parchment as if it could keep him steady. Sam had drawn a crude map in one corner, circles and arrows. A boy's sketch of war. Sansa's voice cut through the murmurs. And what does Samwell say of the Dragon Queen? Does he say she will give it freely? Jon met her gaze. In the torchlight, her hair looked like a flame that refused to die. He says she has dragons. He says she's landed in Westeros. Then she will claim Dragonstone, Sansa said. It wasn't a guess. It was a fact spoken like a blade laid on the table. It's her family's seat. Her banners will fly there before ours ever could. A low rumble of agreement. The North had no love for southern rulers, even ones who rode fire. Jon felt something settle in him, heavy and clear. He did not want another meeting where men argued until the dead arrived at their doors. He did not want to ask permission while the world froze. We don't have time to wait for a queen, he said. The words landed hard. You would sail south? Lord Glover asked, incredulous. Leave Winterfell again? I would, Jon said. I'll take men, miners, whatever we can carry. We'll mine dragonglass and bring it home." Sansa's eyes flashed. "And if the Dragon Queen lands while you're there?" "Then we'll speak to her," Jon said, though he could already feel how small those words were. Speak to her. As if words had ever stopped a war. As if words could force a queen to share what she believed was hers. "And if she burns you for standing on her shore?" the Karstark cousin asked. Jon's mouth twisted. He thought of fire. He thought of the way the dead had not cared about it, of the way living men did. "Then I burn," he said. "Better one man than all of us." Davos reached out, not quite touching Jon's sleeve, like a man trying not to grab a drowning sailor by the throat. "Your Grace, if you go small. Fast. Quiet. Dragonstone's got coves and caves. You can land without announcing yourselves." Jon nodded once, taking in the words. Brienne's hand moved to the hilt of her sword, not in threat but in habit. "If you leave," she said to Sansa, then corrected herself with a glance at Jon. "If the king in the north leaves, Winterfell will need protection." Sansa's lips pressed together. She looked at Jon as if seeing him not as a brother but as a piece on a board that had already cost too much. "You're thinking of dragonglass," she said quietly. "I'm thinking of what happens when the North's king walks into the south with no army and a crown on his head." Jon didn't answer at once. Outside, wind rattled the shutters. Somewhere in the castle, a child log. Head. One short burst, then silence, as if someone had hushed them. That laugh cut Jon more sharply than any accusation. "The dead are coming," he said finally. "If we let politics decide whether we live, then we've already lost." He folded Sam's letter and tucked it into his cloak, close to his chest, like a talisman. "I'm going to Dragonstone," he said. "Not to conquer it, not to insult anyone's claim. To take what we need before the night takes everything." For a heartbeat, no one spoke. Then a few voices rose. Protest, agreement, fear, until they tangled into noise. Jon heard them all and felt none of it. His mind was already on black stone and black glass, on ships and storms, on the long road that would carry him away from Winterfell again. He thought absurdly of the Raven. It had flown through winter to bring them this chance. How many chances did the living get? He turned to Sansa. "You'll hold Winterfell," he said, and the words made the hall tilt, because he was placing the weight of the North onto her shoulders in front of men who would test her. Sansa did not flinch, but her jaw tightened, and Jon saw the hurt behind her control like a bruise beneath skin. "I will," she said, "because I have to." The fire cracked, the hall breathed, and outside, far beyond the walls, the world kept getting colder. The solar smelled of old wood and smoke that had seeped into the beams over centuries. A thin line of daylight pushed through the window, pale and stingy, as if even the sun begrudged Winterfell warmth. Jon stood over the map Davos had spread across the table. Dragonstone was a small, jagged mark in the sea south and east, almost an afterthought compared to the great spread of the north. Davos had pinned it with a dagger, the point biting through parchment as if it could anchor the whole island in place. Sansa shut the door behind them with more force than necessary. "You're leaving again," she said. There was no question in it, no room for excuses. Her voice was a thing she kept sharpened. Jon didn't look up. "I have to. That's what you said when you rode to meet Ramsay Bolton," she snapped, and the name filled the room like smoke. "That's what Robb said every time he marched farther from home. Farther from sense, farther from safety." Jon's shoulders stiffened. He had learned to carry guilt like armor, but Sansa knew where the seams were. "This isn't pride," he said. "It isn't revenge. It's you," Sansa cut in. She moved around the table, skirts whispering. "It's you taking the risk so no one can call you coward. It's you thinking if you pay the price yourself, you can spare everyone else." Jon looked up then, and the weariness in his eyes was not something she could strike down with anger. "If I can spare everyone else, isn't that worth something?" Brienne shifted slightly near the hearth, as if she wanted to step between them and could not decide whose side that would be. Davos kept his hands clasped, his face drawn. watching like a man listening to waves and trying to judge whether the next one would drown them. Sansa leaned over the map, her fingers hovering above the north as if she could feel the cold through paper. "Do you know what men say when a king leaves his seat?" she asked. "They say he runs. They say he doesn't trust his own walls. They say there's weakness in the heart of Winterfell, and they start measuring how much they can take." "I'm not leaving forever," Jon said. "You don't get to promise that," Sansa said, and something in her voice softened into something more dangerous than anger. Fear dressed in reason. "You promised you wouldn't die. You promised you'd come back from the wall. You promised you'd stay. And you keep breaking your promises because the world keeps finding new ways to kill you." Jon's mouth tightened. He thought of the knife that had slid between his ribs, cold and intimate, the betrayal of men he had fed and led. He thought of waking again and the way the air had tasted wrong, as if the world had been rebuilt with slightly different pieces. "I can't let the dead win because I want to sit safe behind stone," he said. "And I can't let the North fall apart because you want to play savior," Sansa shot back. Then quieter, as if the words were finally slipping past the armor she wore for everyone else. "I can't lose you." The room settled around that admission. Outside, the wind hissed against the window like a warning. Jon looked at his sister and saw, for a moment, the girl she had been, bright-eyed and dreaming of songs. That girl had been burned away by southern courts and northern cruelty, and what remained was harder than the stones under their feet. "You won't," he said. Sansa gave a bitter laugh. "You don't know that." Davos cleared his throat softly, as if careful not to intrude on grief. "Lady Sansa," he said, "I've seen kings do foolish things. I've seen them do brave things that look foolish until after. This is hard, but it's not foolish. Dragonglass might be the only thing that saves us." Sansa's eyes flicked to him. "And if the Dragon Queen refuses? If she decides Jon Snow is a trespasser and burns him?" Davos's mouth twitched, pained. "Then we'll have tried. Better than waiting for the dead to knock at our door while we're still arguing about which queen owns which rock." Sansa looked back to Jon. The anger was still there, but it had narrowed into something like a blade finding its point. "If you go," she said, "you go with clear words. You are not claiming Dragonstone. You are not taking a seat. You are taking a weapon, and you send ravens every day, no matter how busy you are, no matter how tired you are, no matter what storm you sail through. If I don't hear from you, you'll assume I'm dead," Jon finished, because it was better to say it than let it hang unsaid. "I'll assume the worst," Sansa said, "because the worst keeps happening." Jon nodded once. "You'll rule while I'm gone," he said. Sansa's lips pressed thin. "Rule," she echoed, tasting the word. "They'll test me." "I know," Jon said, "but you can do it." She held his gaze, searching for weakness, for doubt, for any sign he might be talked down. She found none, and that made her angry all over again. Brienne spoke at last, her voice careful. "Lady Sansa, if the king in the north leaves, I will stay. I swore to protect you." Sansa gave a small nod, gratitude flickering and gone. "I'll need you," she admitted. Jon looked at Brienne. "And I'll take men who can fight," he said. Davos tapped the dagger at Dragonstone. "You take men who can keep quiet," he corrected. "A small crew. If anyone hears a northern king is sailing south, you'll have half the 7 kingdoms sniffing after you like hounds." Jon's fingers traced the edge of the map where the sea lay, blank and merciless. He could almost feel the salt. "I'll go as myself," Jon said, "but I won't go with banners flying. Not unless I have to." Sansa's eyes narrowed. "If Daenerys Targaryen lands and sees you there, she'll think you're taking what's hers." Jon's mouth pulled into something not quite a smile. "Then I'll tell her the truth," he said, "that the dead don't care who sits on which throne." Sansa's gaze softened in a way that made Jon uneasy, because it felt like F.A. Rewell. "Truth doesn't win thrones," she said. "It might win this war," Jon replied. He stepped away from the table and moved to her. For a moment he hesitated, awkward as a man who had learned to fight before he learned to comfort. Then he drew her into a brief embrace, his cloak smelling of cold and steel. Sansa's arms tightened around him, and for the space of a heartbeat, she let herself be his sister again. When she pulled back, her eyes were bright but dry. "Go," she said, voice steady. "Bring us what we need, and come home." Jon nodded. "I will." He did not say that the sea did not care about vows. He did not say that fire and ice would not bend for a promise made in a warm room. He only took the dagger out of the map and tucked it into his belt, as if the point could cut his way through everything that waited south. Winterfell moved with the restless urgency of a camp that could not afford to sleep. Men hurried across the courtyard with bundles on their backs, breath smoking in the air. The clank of metal and the thud of wood against stone became a rough rhythm, a heartbeat under the castle's constant wind. Davos led Jon through it all with the practiced ease of a man who had spent his life on decks that pitched and swayed. He pointed out what they needed in the armory: axes, picks, ropes, hooks, lantern oil, and what they did not. "No banners," Davos said, as Jon's eyes lingered on a stack of folded direwolf standards. "Not yet." Jon's jaw tightened. "If the men ask, tell them we're going fishing," Davos said flatly. "Or tell them nothing. Men get loose tongues when they've got ale in them. Loose tongues get kings killed." Jon glanced at Davos. "You've done this before." Davos's mouth twisted. "I've done foolish voyages," he said. "And I've done voyages I didn't want to do. This one's somewhere in the middle." In the corner of the armory, a few men from the Night's Watch lingered. What was left of them? Black cloaks patched, faces older than their years. Edison Tollet stood among them, his eyes hollow, as if part of him was still on the wall staring into a dark that never blinked. Jon approached them, and the men straightened instinctively. Old habits, old loyalties. "Dolorous Ed," Jon said. Ed gave a crooked half-bow. "Your Grace," he replied, and the title sounded like it weighed him down. "Never thought I'd be bowing to you. Thought you'd be dead, to be honest. Still think that sometimes." Jon's mouth twitched. "You're coming," he shrugged. "If we're going to find a way to kill the dead, might as well go to the place that's full of black rocks. Better than waiting around to be eaten." Another man, younger, with a scar across his chin, spoke up. "The watch is broken," he said, "but we're still sworn to fight them. If you're going, we go." Jon felt a tightening in his chest, something close to gratitude and pain. He had led men who died believing in him. The least he could do was not squander what they offered now. "Then get what you need," Jon said. "Warm clothes, blades. Don't bring anything you can't carry. We move fast." Ed nodded, then hesitated as if he wanted to say something and did not want to waste words. Finally he said, "Dragonstone's south. Might be warmer." "Don't count on it," Jon replied. "Winter follows us." They moved back out into the courtyard. A team of men rolled barrels toward the gate: salt meat, dried oats, hard bread. The North's idea of luxury for a voyage. Davos paused near the well. He watched a boy struggle with a coil of rope and stepped in to help, his hands quick, practiced. "We'll need more than men who can swing a sword," he said as he worked. "We need hands that can mine, men that won't panic in the dark." "We have miners," Jon said, "from the hills." Davos agreed. "But Dragonstone isn't like your hills. It's volcanic rock, full of holes and vents. Caves that breathe hot air sometimes. Smells of sulfur. Men get nervous when stone feels alive." Jon's eyes flicked toward the walls, toward the gray line of sky beyond. "You know the island," he said. Davos's hands paused on the rope. For a moment his face went distant, as if he was seeing another shore, another castle, another king. "I served Stannis Baratheon there," he said quietly. "I smuggled food past a siege for him when he was still a lord with something to prove. I watched him stand in that castle and think it was his by right and by fire." Jon said nothing. Davos's history was a sea of battles and grief. Jon did not want to stir it unless he had to. Davos continued, voice rough. Dragonstones got caves by the sea. Smugglers used them. I used them. We can land there, slip in quiet. If the place is empty, we take it. If there's a few men, we talk, Jon said. Davos's eyebrows rose. You talk. I'll keep my knife ready in case talking goes poorly. Jon's gaze fell on the men loading tools. Picks, shovels, iron wedges. It struck him that they were preparing to dig for hope. How long to get there? Jon asked. If we've got decent wind and don't die in a storm, Davos said. A few days, maybe more. Depends what ships we can get from White Harbor. Jon glanced toward the stables where his horse was being saddled. We ride to White Harbor today, he decided. Davos nodded once, approval flickering. Good. The sooner we're on water, the sooner we're out of reach of northern gossip. Jon started toward the gate, then stopped. He looked back across the courtyard. Sansa stood on the steps, watching. She was wrapped in a heavy cloak, but the cold still seemed to cling to her. Brienne stood beside her like a shadow that could cut steel. Sansa did not wave. She did not smile. She simply watched, her face composed in the way she had learned to be composed when her heart was breaking. Jon held her gaze for a heartbeat, then turned away. He could not linger. Lingering was a luxury for people who believed they had time. As he mounted his horse, Tormund strode over, his boots crunching in snow. So, Tormund said, grinning as if they were going to steal ale from a lord's cellar. You're going to the Dragon's Rock. Jon nodded. I am. Tormund's grin widened. Will there be dragons? I don't know, Jon said. Tormund slapped Jon's leg hard enough to jolt him in the saddle. Then it will be interesting, he said, and his eyes gleamed with the reckless joy of a man who had already died in every way that mattered and decided to laugh at whatever came next. Jon exhaled, a plume of white in the cold air. Stay here, he told Tormund. Guard Winterfell. Tormund's grin faltered. I guard you, he protested. You guard my sister, Jon said, and there was steel beneath it. Tormund looked toward Sansa on the steps, then back to Jon. Something unreadable moved across his face. Final. Ly, he grunted. Fine, he said, as if agreeing to something unpleasant. But if you die again, I'm not carrying you back. Too heavy. Jon almost smiled. Almost. Then he kicked his horse forward, and the gate opened, and Winterfell began to fall behind him like a memory. He could not afford to keep too close. White Harbor smelled of salt and fish and smoke, a different kind of cold than Winterfell's. Here the wind carried dampness that sank into bone. The city's white walls were stained with sea grime, and gulls screamed overhead as if mocking every promise men made to gods. Jon moved through the docks like a man walking into enemy territory. The North's ships were fewer than the South's, their hulls heavier, built for cold waters and short runs. Sailors watched him from under fur-lined caps, their eyes cautious. A king was a strange thing to see on the planks where men were used to merchants and smugglers. Davos seemed more at ease. He moved between stacks of barrels and coiled ropes with the familiarity of a man returning to a language he'd spoken before he learned others. He greeted shipmasters, nodded at riggers, and listened for the small sounds that told him whether a vessel was seaworthy. The creak of a mast, the groan of rope, the steady slap of water against wood. A burly man with a beard like a brush, one of the Manderley captains, stood with his hands on his hips, blocking the gangplank to a broad-bellied ship. I don't care what crown you wear, the man said bluntly. That sea's not your friend this time of year. You want to sail south, you sail with men who know how to read a storm. Davos's mouth twitched. He's got me, he said, hooking his thumb at his chest. The captain snorted. I've heard of you. Onion Knight, smuggler turned lord. Might be you know the sea. Might be you just got lucky. Davos leaned in slightly, his eyes sharp. Luck's never saved me when the wind turns, he said, only knowing which way to turn with it. Jon watched the exchange, the way two seamen measured each other. It reminded him of northern lords, the way they tested strength with words before they reached for steel. The captain's gaze slid to Jon. "And what does the king in the north want with southern waters?" he asked. "You planning to raid?" Jon could have lied. He could have spoken of trade, of negotiations, of anything that sounded less desperate. But the captain's face was weathered, and his eyes were the eyes of a man who had buried friends at sea. Jon sensed he would respect truth more than excuses. "We're going to Dragonstone," Jon said. He saw the way the name stirred unease. "We need dragonglass. It can kill the dead." A few sailors nearby went still, pretending not to listen while listening with every inch of themselves. The dead were a story to southern ports. Here, in the north, they were a shadow that stretched even over the sea. The captain spat into the water. "If the dead are coming," he said, "then all our squabbles are worth less than rotten fish." Davos nodded. "That's what I keep telling people," he said, then added, "Right. No one listens until the fish starts talking back." The captain grunted, as if deciding Davos was either mad or right. "You want my ship," he said. "You'll pay for the risk." "We'll pay," Jon said. Gold was scarce, but debt was cheaper than death. "And I'll bring your men home." The captain's eyes narrowed. "Kings don't always come home." Jon met his gaze without flinching. "Then I'll be like most men," he said. There was a murmur at that, and something softened in the captain's expression. Something like reluctant respect. "Fine," he said. "But you don't sail with a flotilla. You sail with 2 ships. The sea notices too many sails. The Crown in King's Landing notices too many sails. And if the Dragon Queen is landing, her scouts will notice." "We want to be unnoticed," Davos agreed quickly. They walked the decks as the day dragged on. Jon inspected holds, watched men lash barrels down so they would not shift in rough waters. He spoke to the miners Sansa had sent. Hard-faced men with calloused hands, their eyes alert as if expecting rock to leap at them. They were quiet, but when Jon mentioned dragonglass, one of them, an older man with a missing tooth, nodded slowly. "Black glass," the man said. "We've seen bits washed up on the coast sometimes, sharp as sin. If there's a mountain of it, we can carve it. We can make blades." "You'll have guards," Jon promised. "But keep your wits. It might not be empty." The man shrugged. "Stone is never empty," he said and walked away. At the end of the dock, Jon paused to watch the water. It was gray-green, heavy, and it moved with a slow patience that made him think of armies on the march. Davos came to stand beside him. "You've done the right thing," he said quietly. Jon didn't look at him. "I don't know what right is anymore," he admitted. "Only what has to be done." Davos's eyes followed the movement of a ship being pushed away from the pier. "That's what being a king is," he said. "Not being right, being the one who decides." Jon's hand tightened on the railing until his knuckles whitened. He thought of Sansa holding Winterfell. He thought of the wall cracking. He thought of the dead, patient and endless. A bell rang, sharp and bright. Sailors shouted. The ships were ready. Jon turned away from the sea and stepped toward the gangplank. Every board creaked under his boots as if warning him he was leaving solid ground for something that did not care whether he lived or died. He stopped at the top of the plank and looked back at White Harbor. The city's walls rose pale against the leaden sky. Beyond them lay the long road back to Winterfell, the long road back to home. Jon did not let himself linger. He walked onto the ship and felt, for the first time, the subtle sway beneath his feet. The sea accepted him with indifference. The first day at sea felt like a test. The second felt like punishment. Wind battered the sails until the canvas snapped and boomed like distant thunder. Spray rose in cold sheets that slapped Jon's face and soaked his cloak. The deck rocked beneath him in a steady rhythm that made his stomach twist until he learned to move with it. Knees loose, weight shifting with the ship's breathing. Davos looked almost content in the storm. He moved along the deck, shouting instructions, correcting knots, reading the sky as if it were a book he'd loved in childhood. When Jon stumbled once, catching himself on a rope, Davos didn't laugh. He simply said, "Look at the horizon, not your feet. The sea likes to remind you who's in charge." Jon gritted his teeth and did as he was told. By night, the cold deepened. The men huddled in the cramped belly of the ship, wrapped in cloaks that stank of wet wool. Lantern light swung with the motion, making shadows jump across the beams like restless spirits. The sea's constant groan and hiss became a lullaby that never quite let anyone sleep. Jon lay on a narrow bunk, staring up at the ceiling. The ship's creaks sounded like the groaning of old wood in Winterfell's walls, but harsher, more strained, as if the vessel was always on the verge of splitting apart. He found himself thinking of the moment he'd risen after death, of the way the world had felt slightly tilted, as if the gods had put him back wrong. He heard Ed's voice nearby, muttering to himself as if prayer could be made into complaint. "If this ship sinks," Ed whispered, "I'd like it known I asked for something quieter, like being eaten." A few men chuckled weakly. Humor was a small fire against fear. Jon closed his eyes, and the darkness behind them filled with images. The walls endless white, the pale face of a dead boy with blue eyes, the sound of ice cracking. When he opened them again, Davos was sitting on a crate nearby, chewing on something that looked like dried fish. He offered a piece without speaking. Jon shook his head. Davos shrugged and kept chewing. "You're quiet," he observed. "I'm thinking," Jon said. "That's dangerous," Davos replied. "Thinking is how men talk themselves out of doing what needs doing." Jon let out a breath that smelled of damp wool. "Do you ever miss it?" he asked suddenly. "The north, the cold." Davos's eyes flicked to him. "Miss it?" he repeated as if tasting the word. "I miss my sons," he said plainly. "I miss my wife. I don't miss cold. I don't miss hunger, but I miss certainty. Up north, you know what you're fighting. The cold's honest. And the south isn't," Jon said. Davos's mouth twisted. "The south smiles while it stabs," he said. "And it burns while it calls it justice." Jon's mind drifted to the stories of dragons, creatures of flame and arrogance, towering above men like living judgment. He had seen one once, in a dream he could not be sure was dream. He had felt heat on his face that did not belong in winter. "Tell me about Dragonstone," Jon said. "Not the maps, the place." Davos leaned back against a beam, eyes half-lidded as if he could smell the island already. "It's black," he said. "Black stone shaped into dragons and teeth and claws. The castle looks like it grew out of the rock, not built by men. The air smells of salt and sulfur. Sometimes the ground feels warm under your boots because there's fire beneath the stone." "Fire under stone," Jon murmured, thinking of the dead under ice. Davos nodded. "And caves," he said. "Caves that twist like a maze. When I smuggled onions in during the siege, I used one that opened behind a waterfall. The sound covered the oars. The darkness hid the boat." Jon pictured it. A hidden mouth in the cliff, water roaring, a boat slipping through like a secret. "We land there," Jon said. Davos's eyes opened fully. "We do," he agreed. "Quiet. Fast." The ship lurched suddenly, a violent roll that sent men grabbing for support. A shout rose from above, muffled by wood. Davos stood in one swift motion and climbed toward the deck. Jon followed, his feet adjusting to the sway. When he emerged into the night, the wind hit him like a slap. Rain had started, cold needles driven by gusts. Sailors fought with ropes, their hands raw, their faces set in grim determination. Davos shouted orders, his voice cutting through the storm. The ship dipped and rose, like a beast struggling to keep its head above water. Jon gripped the railing and stared into the darkness ahead. The sea was a black plain, endless, and the sky was a lid of cloud. Somewhere out there lay Dragonstone, a black rock in a black sea, waiting. He felt the ships would shudder beneath him and wondered, briefly, if the sea would decide to take them all before they ever reached shore. It would be an easy death compared to what waited in the north. Cold water and dark. No blue eyes. No screaming. But the ship held. It rose again, shaking off the wave like a dog shaking off rain, and pushed forward, toward the south, toward fire. toward an island that might already belong to another queen. Jon's hands tightened on the railing until they ached. He did not pray. He did not bargain with gods who had already taken too much. He simply watched the horizon and refused to be thrown. They found the cave at dawn, exactly where Davos swore it would be, though the coast looked like the mouth of a beast no man should willingly enter. Dragonstone rose from the sea in jagged black cliffs, streaked with wet, crowned by the shadow of a castle that seemed carved out of nightmare. Mist clung to the rock, shifting and curling as if the island breathed. The water at the base churned restlessly, white foam hissing against stone. Davos guided the smaller boat away from the larger ship, keeping their approach low and quiet. Oars dipped into the water with muted splashes. Men hunched in their cloaks, eyes fixed on the looming darkness ahead. Jon sat at the front, his hand on the hilt of Longclaw, though he knew steel would be useless against the dead and might not be much use against dragons. The cave mouth opened behind a curtain of falling water. The sound swallowed their passage. They slipped in, and the world became stone and shadow. Inside, the air was damp and cold, but there was a faint warmth too, like breath from an unseen throat deeper in. Water dripped steadily from the ceiling, each drop a small, patient tick. Jon's boots scraped against rock as he stepped out, his breath turning to mist. Davos lifted a lantern. Its light painted the cave walls in shifting gold, revealing jagged edges and dark seams that glimmered faintly. Jon's eyes caught on a shard embedded in the stone, black, glossy, sharp. Dragonglass, even here. You see, Davos whispered, his voice reverent, like a man in a September. It's in the bones of the island. Jon reached out and touched the shard. It was cold at first, then warmed slightly beneath his fingers, as if it drank heat. He felt a strange thrill, not of greed but of possibility. They moved deeper, lanterns bobbing. The cave narrowed, then widened again, revealing a tunnel that sloped upward. The sound of the sea faded behind them, replaced by the hush of stone. Jon's men were careful, quiet. Northerners were used to darkness. They knew how to listen. At the tunnel's end, Davos pushed aside a slab of rock that looked like part of the wall until it moved. A hidden exit. He grinned briefly, a flash of pride. "I told you," he murmured. They emerged into a narrow passage carved into the cliffside, half natural, half shaped by hands that had wanted secrecy. The air outside was colder, salty, and the dawn light was thin, gray. Above them, the castle loomed, its towers like claws. No guards challenged them. No horn sounded. The silence was unnerving. Jon moved forward, boots crunching on gravel. He expected to feel eyes on him, to hear the scrape of steel, the shout of alarm. Instead, there was only the distant cry of gulls and the low sigh of wind. They climbed in single file up a steep path that twisted toward the castle's lower walls. Stone dragons jutted from parapets, their mouths open in eternal roar. Rainwater ran down their faces like tears. At a gate half hidden in shadow, Davos paused. The iron bars were rusted. The wood behind them was weathered, but intact. He pressed his shoulder against it. It groaned, then gave, swinging inward with a long, reluctant creak. Jon stepped through. The courtyard inside was empty. Weeds grew between stones. A few broken barrels lay near a wall, their contents long spilled. The place looked abandoned, but abandonment did not mean safe. Jon had learned that in ruins north of the wall, where the dead waited in stillness until living feet woke them. He raised his hand, signaling his men to spread out. They moved like shadows, weapons ready, eyes scanning windows and doorways. Davos walked beside Jon, lantern in hand. When Stannis left, he murmured, "I thought the castle would die. Looks like it's been sleeping." Jon's gaze traced the architecture. Dragonstone was not like Winterfell's blunt practicality. It was ornate, cruel in its beauty. Stone carved into scales and wings and teeth. Doorways arched like jaws. "Who built this?" One of the miners whispered, voice tight. "Targaryens," Davos said. Long ago. Jon felt the weight of that. A place built by dragon lords, meant to impress and intimidate. A place made to remind men they were small. He forced himself to breathe steadily. We take it room by room, he said quietly. No rusing, no shouting. They moved toward the main hall. Jon's boots echoed on stone. Every sound seemed louder here, as if the castle wanted them to know they were trespassers. Inside the hall, dust lay thick. Long tables stood empty. Chairs were overturned, as if the last people had left in a hurry, or as if something had driven them out. At the far end, a great stone throne sat beneath a carved dragon's head. It was not the Iron Throne, but it carried its own menace, like a beast waiting to bite. Jon stared at it for a long moment. He had sat on a throne once in Winterfell, and it had felt like a joke. Here, the throne felt like a trap. He turned away. Their lantern light fell on a door to the side, carved with twisting dragon bodies. Davos pushed it open, and warm air flowed out like a sigh. Beyond was a staircase leading down. The mines, Davos whispered. Jon stepped toward the stairs, feeling the pull of the earth beneath. Dragonglass waited below, a weapon waiting to be woken. He did not know yet that another weapon was sailing toward this island too, one with wings and fire. But the castle's silence felt less like peace and more like the pause before a storm. The painted table sat in a chamber that felt like the throat of the castle, wide, curved, and lined with stone that resembled ribs. It was larger than Jon had expected, an enormous slab carved with the shape of Westeros, every river and mountain painted in faded colors. The paint had chipped with age, but the land remained, stubborn as memory. Jon stood at its edge, lantern light glinting off the table's worn surface. He traced the north with his eyes, Winterfell, White Harbor, the Wall, then followed the coastline down to the jagged mark of Dragonstone. Davos leaned in, his lantern casting a warm halo on the carved land. Stannis used to stand right where you're standing, he said softly. He'd stare at that table like it could tell him what to do, like if he looked long enough, the realm would arrange itself under his finger. Jon's mouth tightened. Did it? He asked. Davos huffed a short laugh. No, he said. The realm doesn't like being arranged. Jon imagined Stannis here, jaw clenched, eyes burning with certainty. A king who had believed duty was enough to win the world. A king who had burned his own child for a prophecy, if the stories were true. Jon's stomach turned. Then why keep the table? Jon asked, though he knew the answer. Power loved symbols. Men needed something to touch when the world felt too large. Davos's gaze drifted over the painted rivers. Because it reminds you that you're small, he said. And because it makes you forget it at the same time. Jon's fingers hovered over the carved line of the wall. He pictured the dead pressing against ice. He pictured the living arguing over crowns while the night crept closer. He drew a slow breath. We're not here to claim land, he said, more to himself than to Davos. We're here for dragonglass. Davos agreed. But people won't see it that way. A man on a throne looks like a man who wants to keep it. Jon stepped back from the table. The room smelled faintly of smoke, old candle wax and cold stone. It was too easy to imagine torches burning here, maps being traced, armies being ordered south. It was too easy to imagine men dying for lines on a table. He could not afford to become that man. Outside, his soldiers searched room by room. The castle was vast, full of corridors and chambers that twisted like a labyrinth. Now and then, the sound of a door creaking open or a boot scraping stone echoed down the halls. Each sound made Jon's hand tighten on Longclaw. Hours passed and still no one challenged them. In the kitchens, they found old stores, salted fish, grain gone stale, barrels of wine that had turned sour. In the armory, they found rusted swords and a few spears in better condition. In a small sept-like chamber, candles had been burned down to stubs, their wax pooled thick like frozen tears. Someone was here, one of Jon's men murmured, pointing at a footprint in the dust, fresh enough to make Jon's skin prickle. Davos frowned. Fisher folk, he guessed. Or smugglers. Dragonstone's never truly empty. Just quiet. Quiet was dangerous. By evening, they had secured the main hall and the most accessible corridors. Jon's men lit fires in hearths that had not been used in months. The smoke rose, thin and uncertain, as if the castle did not believe it would be warmed again. Jon stood in the courtyard as the first fire caught. The wind pulled at his cloak. He looked up at the battlements, at the carved stone dragons whose wings cast jagged shadows across the yard. "We need a signal," a soldier said nearby, "so our ships can see we've taken the castle." Jon hesitated. A signal could also draw eyes, but the ships had to know whether to approach. He turned to the bundle of cloth one of the men held. Direwolf banners, dark gray and white. The North's symbol. Here, against Blackstone, it would be stark. Sansa's voice echoed in his head. "You are not claiming Dragonstone." He could not claim it, but he could occupy it. He could hold it long enough to take what the living needed. "Put it on the lowest tower," Jon said at last. "Not the highest. We're not declaring anything. We're telling our men where to land." The soldier nodded and hurried away. Davos watched Jon's face. "She won't like it," he said quietly. Jon didn't need to ask who. "Daenerys Targaryen," he said, tasting the name like something foreign. "If she comes." "She will," Davos said. "Kings and queens come to what they believe is theirs, especially when dragons are involved." Jon's gaze went to the horizon beyond the cliffs, where sea met sky in a smear of gray. Somewhere beyond that line, a fleet might already be sailing. A queen might already be walking the decks, thinking of home. Jon's hand moved unconsciously to his chest, where Sam's letter rested. Dragonglass was here. The answer they'd been begging for was under their feet. All they had to do was dig it out and get it north before the dead arrived. All they had to do was do it before the Dragon Queen did. In the fading light, the direwolf banner rose on the tower, snapping in the wind. It looked small against the castle's carved dragons. It looked defiant anyway. Jon stared at it, and for a moment he felt as if he had placed a spark in a room full of dry straw. The tunnels under Dragonstone were older than the names men used for their gods. They twisted through the rock with a rough, uneven logic, as if the island had been hollowed out by fire and then picked clean by hands that followed the heat. Torchlight turned the walls amber and alive. Shadows danced, stretching dragon shapes across stone. The air smelled of damp earth and sulfur, and there were moments when Jon swore he felt a faint warmth rising from beneath, like a heartbeat far below. The miners worked with grim focus. Picks struck rock with sharp, ringing blows. Wedges were hammered into cracks. The sound echoed down the tunnels, multiplying until it felt like a dozen men worked where there were only 4. Jon watched them, lantern in hand, trying to learn their rhythm. He had dug graves before. He had never dug for weapons. The older miner with the missing tooth, Harl, he'd said his name was, ran his hand along a seam in the wall. His fingers paused on something smooth and glassy. He leaned closer, squinting. Then he grinned, and the grin made him look like a boy. "There," Harl said. His voice reverberated. "There's the black." He drove his pick carefully, not smashing but prying. A chunk of rock cracked away, and something gleamed beneath, black and glossy, catching torchlight with a sharp, unnatural shimmer. It looked like obsidian in a lord's ring, but raw, jagged, hungry. Dragonglass. The men went still for a heartbeat, the way animals go still when they scent water after a long drought. Then they surged forward, hands reaching, voices rising in rough excitement. Jon stepped closer, his breath held. He reached out and touched the exposed vein. The surface was cold, but it felt alive, in a way he could not explain. It was as if it remembered fire. Davos stood beside him, his lantern shaking slightly in his hand. "There's enough," he whispered. "Gods, there's enough." Jon's mind raced. Spears tipped with dragonglass. Daggers, arrows, blades that could actually bite into the dead and make them fall and stay fallen. A simple material, buried in stone, might be the difference between dawn and endless night. A younger miner laughed, raw and startled. "We'll arm every man from here to the wall," he said. "If the wall's still there," someone muttered. The laughter died. The tunnels grew colder again. Jon forced himself to focus. Hope was dangerous when it turned into complacency. "How fast can you cut it?" he asked. Harl scratched his beard. "Fast enough," he said. "It's glass. You chip it wrong, it shatters. But we can shape it. We need time. We need hands. And we need guards. Mining draws attention." Davos nodded. "We've got a few men," he said. "Not enough for a siege." Jon looked at the dark vein in the wall. It seemed endless, running like a black river through stone. "We take as much as we can," he said. "Every day. We ship it north in small loads. We don't keep it all in one place." Davos's eyes narrowed. Because when someone comes, Jon corrected. The words settled heavily in his chest. They worked through the night. Torches burned down and were replaced. Men's hands bled and were wrapped in cloth and kept working. The air grew thick with dust and sweat, and Jon's hair stuck to his forehead. The miners pried loose shards of dragonglass and laid them in crates lined with straw, each piece handled with care like it was a newborn child. Jon took a dagger-sized shard and weighed it in his hand. It was lighter than steel and sharper than any blade he'd held. Caught the light like a dark star. He thought of Arya, swift and deadly. He thought of Sansa holding Winterfell. He thought of the men on the wall, tired and scared. He thought of the dead, endless, patient. He imagined driving this shard into a white and seeing it fall. He imagined a line of living men armed with black glass, holding the dead at bay. It was the first time in months he had imagined victory and not felt like he was lying to himself. When they finally returned to the surface, the sky was pale with morning. The sea beyond the cliffs looked calm, as if it had forgotten the storm that had battered them on the way here. Jon stood on the courtyard stones and let the cold air hit his sweat-damp skin. He looked up at the direwolf banner flapping on the tower, then down at the crates being carried toward the hidden sea cave. This was what he'd come for. This was worth the risk. But as he watched his men disappear into the shadowed mouth of the tunnel leading to the caves, a thought slid into his mind, cold as ice. If dragonglass could kill the dead, then every ruler in Westeros would want it. Not for survival alone, for power. Jon's stomach tightened. The weapon they were digging out of Dragonstone might save the world. It might also start a war. It happened on the third day, when Jon was beginning to believe the island might truly be empty. One of the sentries came running, breathless, his face tight. "Your Grace," he said, "we found people. In the lower storerooms. They were stealing food." Jon's hand went automatically to Longclaw. "How many?" "7, the man said. "Maybe more hiding." Jon followed him through a narrow corridor, down a staircase that spiraled into the castle's belly. The air grew colder and damper. The torch in the sentry's hand hissed as drops fell from the ceiling. They reached a storage chamber where barrels had been stacked and left to rot. The smell of old wine and mold hit Jon's nose. In the corner, pressed against the wall like rats, were 7 figures. Men and women, thin and ragged, their clothes patched and stained. One boy couldn't have been more than 12, clutching a loaf of bread to his chest like treasure. They froze as Jon entered, eyes wide. The leader, a man with stringy hair and a scar over his lip, lifted a rusted spear. His hand shook. "Back!" the man barked. "Back or you'll die," Davos said quietly from behind Jon. Jon glanced back. Davos's face had gone hard. His eyes were fixed on one of the men in the group, a broad-shouldered smuggler with a crooked nose. The smuggler's eyes widened in recognition, then narrowed in fear. "Davos Seaworth," the smuggler rasped. "Thought you were dead." Davos's mouth pulled into something like a smile without warmth. "Not yet," he said. "You're still stealing from Dragonstone?" The smuggler sneered, trying to cover his unease. "We live," he said. "Castle's empty. Food's food." "It's not empty anymore," Davos replied. The leader of the holdouts thrust his spear forward a fraction. Who are you? He demanded, eyes flicking to Jon's sword, to his cloak, to the men behind him. Lannisters? Baratheons? Another set of thieves. Jon stepped forward slowly, keeping his sword low but visible. He did not want to kill starving people. He did not want their blood on this stone, but he would not let them endanger his mission. My name is Jon Snow, he said. He saw the blankness in their faces. The North's king meant nothing here. I came for dragonglass, he continued, to fight the dead. At that, a woman in the group made a sharp sound, half laugh, half sob. The dead? She repeated, as if it were a tale told to frighten children. Jon's eyes held hers. They're real, he said, and they're coming. The boy clutched his bread tighter, his knuckles white. The leader swallowed, his spear wavering. We've heard stories, he muttered. From sailors, from drunks, always stories. Davos stepped forward, and his presence was like a hook. I've seen them, he said, voice rough. So has he. Stories don't burn cities. Stories don't march in silence. But the dead do. The smuggler with the crooked nose shifted uneasily. And what do you want? He asked, voice wary. To throw us off the cliffs? To hang us for stealing stale wine? Jon looked at them again. Ragged, hungry, not soldiers, survivors. You can leave, Jon said. Take what food you can carry and go. Or you can stay and work. Help mine. Help load ships. Help get dragonglass to the north. If you stay, you follow my rules. No stealing. No knives drawn in my castle. If you break those rules, you'll be punished. The leader's eyes narrowed. Your castle, he echoed, tasting the words. This castle belongs to whoever saves the world, Jon said, sharper than he intended. He took a breath and forced his voice steadier. I don't care about titles. I care about living through winter. The woman who had laugh-sobbed earlier looked at the boy, then at Jon. If we go, she said quietly. Where do we go? The sea's cold. The mainland's full of soldiers. The Queen in King's Landing hangs people for sport. Jon's jaw tightened. He thought of refugees north of the wall, hunted by both living and dead. There was nowhere safe in Westeros anymore. Then stay, he said. Earn your food. Earn your place. Fight for the living. The leader hesitated. The rusted spear dipped. He looked around at his people, at their hollow cheeks and wary eyes. Then his gaze flicked upward, as if he could see through stone to the direwolf banner flapping above. A wolf king on Dragonstone, he muttered. That'll bring trouble. It already has, Davos said grimly. The smuggler with the crooked nose took a step forward, his hands open. What if the Dragon Queen comes? He asked. What if her fleet shows up and sees wolves on her rocks? She'll burn this place. Jon felt the chill of that possibility. Dragons, fire, the way men's faces changed when they imagined it. He could not pretend it wasn't real. If she comes, Jon said, we'll speak to her. And if she tries to burn us for taking dragonglass to fight the dead, then she's no better than the people we're trying to stop. The smuggler barked a laugh without humor. Queens are always better than someone, he said. Usually themselves. Jon held his gaze. You asked what I want, he said. I want you alive. I want your boy alive. I want my sister alive. I want a world left to rule when the war is done. The leader's spear lowered fully. He nodded once, slow and reluctant, like a man agreeing to a bargain with a storm. Fine, he said. We stay. We work. But if the dragons come, we'll run. Fair, Jon said. As they turned to leave, the boy still clutching bread looked up at Jon, eyes wide. Are you really a king? The boy whispered. Jon's throat tightened. He thought of the crown that had been placed on his head, heavy as a chain. I'm trying to be, he said. The boy nodded solemnly, as if that was the only answer that mattered. They escorted the holdouts up toward the surface. Davos lingered beside the smuggler, his voice low. If I catch you stealing again, Davos murmured, I'll toss you in the sea myself. The smuggler bared his teeth. Still the same, he muttered. Davos's eyes were cold. No, he said.
I've gotten tired.
When Jon stepped back into the open air, he felt a strange unease crawling along his spine. The island was no longer empty. The island was no longer silent. It had eyes now, tongues, fear, and fear traveled faster than ravens. By the time the sun began to sink, Jon had learned the castle's moods. Dragonstone did not greet dawn with warmth. It greeted it with damp stone and wind that smelled of salt and old fire. At midday the light sharpened, turning the sea into hammered metal. At night the island became a black tooth on black water, and the castle's carved dragons seemed to shift in torchlight, their stone eyes watching. Jon stood on the battlements as sunset bled into the horizon. The sky was streaked with bruised red and gray, and the sea reflected it in torn ribbons. The direwolf banner snapped above him, loud in the wind, a stubborn splash of northern identity against the island's ancient dragons. Davos leaned on the stone beside him, squinting into the distance. We've loaded 2 shipments, he said. Small, quiet. If the sea's kind, they'll reach White Harbor in a few days. If it's not, the sea is never kind, Jon said, not bitterly, just resigned. Davos huffed. He agreed, but sometimes it's less cruel. Below them in the courtyard, men moved among crates and torches. The miners had stacked dragonglass shards in straw-lined boxes. The holdouts, former thieves turned workers, hauled barrels and rope, their faces wary but focused. Jon watched them and felt the strange, fragile thing that came when strangers decided to trust each other because they had no other choice. A raven flapped awkwardly as it landed on the wall near Jon. One of the men caught it gently, tied a small message tube to its leg, and sent it off into the darkening sky. Jon had written the message himself, his hand cramped from the effort. Sansa, we have dragonglass. The island is mostly empty. We're sending shipments.
I'm alive.
Alive. The word felt like a promise that could break with one wrong wave. He stared out at the sea again. The horizon was a hard line, clean and merciless. For a moment he allowed himself to hope that Daenerys Targaryen might land elsewhere first, that he might mine enough dragonglass to arm the north and leave before her dragons ever shadowed these cliffs. Hope lasted only as long as ignorance. Davos's body went still beside him. There, he said quietly. Jon followed his gaze. At first he saw nothing but waves. Then, far out on the red-stained water, he saw it. A tiny pale mark, like a thorn against the horizon. Then another. Then more, until he could no longer pretend it was imagination. Sails. Not the broad-bellied Northman ships he had come in. These were distant, but the pattern of them spoke of a fleet, organized, moving with purpose. Jon's throat tightened. The sun dipped lower, and the sails looked almost like ghosts in the fading light. How many? Jon asked. Davos squinted, eyes narrowed against wind. Too far to count, he said. Enough. Jon's hand tightened on the battlement's stone until his fingers ached. He felt the island's cold seep into his skin, and beneath it, faintly, the warmth of buried fire. Ice and fire, stone and sea. She's coming, Davos murmured. Jon did not answer. He did not know what to say. He had come here for dragonglass, for survival. And now the greatest power in the world, dragons and ships and a queen who believed the realm was hers, was sailing toward the very rock he had occupied. He thought of Sansa's warning. He thought of the lords in Winterfell already uneasy. He thought of how the South would see this. A northern king sitting on a Targaryen seat like he had forgotten his place. The wind howled, and the banner above them snapped like a whip. Jon's mind raced through possibilities. He could lower the banner, pretend he was a raider, slip away in the night. He could flee back to the north and hope Daenerys didn't follow. But if he fled, he would leave dragonglass behind. He would leave the weapon that could save the world in the hands of someone who might not believe the dead were real. He could stay and explain. He could offer alliance. He could kneel. The last thought hit him like a cold punch. Kneel. He had knelt to save men before. He had sworn oaths he didn't want because the alternative was worse. But the North had crowned him because they were tired of kneeling. Because kneeling had gotten them slaughtered. Jon stared at the distant sails and felt the weight of every life that depended on him. Thousands, tens of thousands. A whole land that did not know how close the night was. He could not afford pride. He could not afford surrender. Davos's voice was low, almost gentle. "You did what you had to," he said, as if sensing the storm in Jon's silence. "Remember that." Jon finally spoke, his voice steady in the wind. "Light more torches," he ordered. "Post men at the cliffs. No arrows unless I say. And send another raven to Winterfell. Tell Sansa what's coming." Davos said. He hesitated, then added, "And what will you tell the Dragon Queen when she asks why a wolf is sitting on her rock?" Jon watched the horizon until his eyes burned. "The truth," he said. Davos's mouth twitched. "That's brave," he said softly. "Also stupid." Jon almost smiled, but it died before it reached his mouth. "Then I'll be both," he said. He stood on the battlements until the last edge of sun vanished and the sea became a dark sheet under a dark sky. The sails remained, pale shapes moving closer with patient certainty. Dragonstone's carved dragons watched him with stone eyes. And Jon Snow, king in the north, waited for a queen made of fire to come and demand what she believed was hers. The sea had been her road to war for so long that Daenerys Targaryen had begun to think of salt and wind as a kind of birthright. Even now, with Westeros in sight, the deck beneath her boots shifting with the swell, she felt more steady than she had ever felt on dry land. Dragonstone rose ahead like a jagged promise kept too late. Black cliffs like broken teeth. A fortress that looked less built than grown. Dragon shapes carved into stone. Arched corridors like ribs. Towers like claws raking at the sky. The place should have felt like home. It should have made her chest ache with belonging. Instead, it made her throat close, because on one of the lower towers, too deliberate to be mistake, too bold to be chance, a banner snapped in the wind that was not hers. A direwolf, gray and white. Stark. For a heartbeat, Daenerys Targaryen thought she was seeing something left behind by ghosts. Some drift of cloth from an older war, caught and forgotten. Then the banner snapped again, clean and loud, as if it enjoyed her confusion. "Your Grace," Missandei said softly, her voice careful, as if a wrong word might summon fire. Daenerys Targaryen did not answer at first. The island loomed larger. The carved stone dragons along the battlements watched the sea with open mouths, their fangs dark with rain. And above those ancient shapes, the wolf moved like a challenge. A sharp, ugly heat rose in her chest. She had not crossed the world to find another claimant already sitting in her ancestral seat. Behind her, Tyrion Lannister's small footsteps scraped along the deck. Tyrion Lannister leaned over the rail, squinting at the tower, then back at her. "That," Tyrion Lannister said, voice mild in the way mild voices sometimes were when trying to hold back disaster, "is unexpected." "Unexpected," Daenerys Targaryen repeated. The word tasted like ash. Varys' hands were folded in front of him, his face smooth with concern. "It may not be what it appears," Varys said. "The North has needs. Desperation makes men do strange things." "Desperation does not raise banners on my walls," Daenerys Targaryen said. Drogon's shadow swept over the deck, vast and sudden. The dragon's wings beat once, sending a gust that made cloaks whip and rigging groan. Drogon circled above the fleet like a storm made flesh, his black scales drinking what little light the sky offered. Daenerys Targaryen watched Drogon's arc and felt her anger sharpen into focus. Anger was simple. Anger was clean. Anger did not allow doubt. "How many ships are in harbor?" Daenerys Targaryen asked. Grey Worm approached, silent as a blade drawn from a sheath. His eyes flicked toward the island. "Few," Grey Worm said. "Two at most, from what can be seen." "Two," Daenerys Targaryen murmured. A small force, a raiding party, a scouting band, or a king who believed himself untouchable. Tyrion Lannister cleared his throat. Your Grace, Tyrion Lannister said, if I may offer a thought that will be deeply unpopular with your very reasonable feelings. Speak, Daenerys Targaryen said, though the word carried warning. Tyrion Lannister lifted a hand, palm up, as if weighing something invisible. If you arrive and your first act in Westeros is to burn Northerners on your own shore, Tyrion Lannister said, you will make a point, but it will be the wrong point. It will not say liberator. It will say conqueror, and the realm has already had enough of those. Daenerys Targaryen's jaw tightened. This is my seat, Daenerys Targaryen said. My family built it. My family bled for it. My family died for it. And a Stark banner flies on it as if it belongs there. Varys' voice was soft. Rumors reach even across seas, Varys said. There is a man in the north now called Jon Snow. He was named king in the north. He fought at the wall. He fought wildlings and the dead. The dead? Daenerys Targaryen repeated, and the word struck her in an unexpected place, like a cold fingertip pressed against her spine. She had heard talk, always talk. Stories that clung to taverns and drunken mouths. But the way Varys said it was not like a tavern tale. It was like a fact that did not care if she believed. Tyrion Lannister nodded quickly, seizing the opening. Jon Snow, Tyrion Lannister said, is not the sort of man who steals castles for sport. If he is there, he may have a reason. A desperate reason. Daenerys Targaryen stared at the direwolf banner until her eyes stung with wind. A reason, perhaps, but reasons did not change what the banner meant to every watching eye. A challenge, a claim, a reminder that even here, at her first foothold, someone had dared to move before her. Drogon roared overhead, a sound that rolled across the sea and slammed into the cliffs. It was not a roar of greeting, it was a roar of ownership. Daenerys Targaryen felt the dragon's fury echo her own. Lower the sails, Daenerys Targaryen ordered. Anchor the fleet. Grey Worm, ready the Unsullied. Not for slaughter, for control. No one enters my castle without my permission. Grey Worm's mouth tightened. And the banner? Grey Worm asked. Daenerys Targaryen's gaze stayed on the wolf. It comes down, Daenerys Targaryen said, either by their hands or by mine. Missandei's eyes flicked to Daenerys Targaryen's face, searching for mercy. Daenerys Targaryen did not offer it yet. Mercy was a gift she chose, not a weakness she showed. Tyrion Lannister stepped closer, lowering his voice. Your Grace, Tyrion Lannister said. Let me speak with them first. Words are cheaper than fire. Daenerys Targaryen looked at Tyrion Lannister. In another life, she might have laughed at the idea of a Lannister trying to save Northerners from a Targaryen's rage. The world made strange alliances. You will speak, Daenerys Targaryen said, and I will listen. For a moment, the fleet moved in like a slow tide, sails lowering, anchors dropping with heavy splashes. The chains groaned like old beasts. Menace. Out. Orders flew. The air filled with the smell of wet rope and iron. Dragonstone drew closer, black and waiting, and the direwolf banner snapped again, as if it could not feel the fire coming. The cabin smelled of oil and ink and salt pressed into wood. A lantern swung slightly with the ship's motion, throwing a warm circle of light over a map laid across the table. Westeros looked smaller here, reduced to lines and ink, a land that pretended it could be understood by staring at it long enough. Daenerys Targaryen pressed her fingertips against Dragonstone on the parchment, hard enough to crease the paper. Tyrion Lannister watched her hand as if it were a blade hovering over his throat. If it is Jon Snow, Tyrion Lannister said, there may be value in him beyond the insult. Daenerys Targaryen's gaze cut to Tyrion Lannister. Explain, Daenerys Targaryen said. Varys spoke before Tyrion Lannister could, smoothing words like silk. Jon Snow has a reputation, Varys said. He is said to be honorable. He is said to fight for others. Those are rare qualities in a king. Honor does not excuse theft, Daenerys Targaryen said. No, Tyrion Lannister agreed quickly. But honor can be used. If Jon Snow is the sort of man who takes Dragonstone only because he believes he must, then he might be persuaded to leave without bloodshed. Or persuaded to help you. Grey Worm's expression did not change, but Daenerys Targaryen knew that meant restraint, not indifference. Grey Worm would gladly spill blood to solve a problem, especially a problem sitting in a queen's home. Missandei stepped closer, her hands folded. Daenerys Targaryen, Missandei said softly, using the full name only when seeking to steady a storm. You came to Westeros to break chains, not to begin with burning those who might become allies. Daenerys Targaryen's throat tightened. Allies, always that word. As if the realm would simply open its arms if she asked nicely. Outside the small window, something vast moved, Drogon's shadow sliding over rain-streaked glass. The dragon made a low sound that vibrated through the wood, like distant thunder. Daenerys Targaryen breathed in slow. She forced her anger into order, the way she had learned to force fear into action. What do we know of how many are there? Daenerys Targaryen asked. Few, Varys said. From what we can see, 2 ships, torches on the walls. No armies. And yet, Daenerys Targaryen said, a banner. Tyrion Lannister lifted a brow. A banner can be a message, Tyrion Lannister said. Not always a claim, sometimes a signal. Daenerys Targaryen's eyes narrowed. A signal to whom? Tyrion Lannister spread his hands. To their ships, Tyrion Lannister said. To anyone watching. To you. Daenerys Targaryen's fingers tightened on the table edge. Then I will answer the message, Daenerys Targaryen said. Grey Worm's gaze sharpened. With Unsullied, Grey Worm said, as if offering a tool already in hand. With Unsullied, Daenerys Targaryen agreed. And dragons. Tyrion Lannister flinched slightly. Perhaps, Tyrion Lannister said carefully, we keep the dragons as persuasion, not as the first sentence of your conversation. Daenerys Targaryen stared at the map again. She remembered stories her brother Viserys had told her when she was small, before exile had sharpened him into cruelty. Dragonstone, he had said, was where House Targaryen had survived when Valyria burned. Dragonstone was the last foothold, the last egg in the ashes. Dragonstone was proof the dragons had not been extinguished. She had dreamed of standing in its halls since she was a girl sleeping on straw in Chujia houses, listening to the rain leak through roofs that were never hers. Now she was here, and another banner flew above her dreams. Daenerys Targaryen lifted her head. We land within the hour, Daenerys Targaryen said. Grey Worm, take 200 Unsullied. Shields, spears, no looting, no killing unless they force it. Grey Worm's jaw tightened as if the restriction pained him, but he bowed his head. Yes, Grey Worm said. Daenerys Targaryen looked to Tyrion Lannister. You will come, Daenerys Targaryen said. Not a request. A tether. If Tyrion Lannister wanted diplomacy, Tyrion Lannister would stand where it could be tested. Tyrion Lannister's mouth pulled into a thin smile. Of course, Tyrion Lannister said. I do enjoy walking into potentially fatal misunderstandings. Missandei's gaze held Daenerys Targaryen's, steady and warm. And you will speak first, Missandei said, as if reminding her who she was when anger tried to rewrite her. Daenerys Targaryen nodded once. I will, Daenerys Targaryen said. Then, quieter, to herself as much as to them. But I will not kneel in my own house. Varys inclined his head. No one expects you to, Varys said. Daenerys Targaryen turned toward the door. Grey Worm stepped aside at once. The ship creaked as if exhaling. Outside, the wind carried the smell of wet stone from the island, sharp and mineral, like a knife dragged across rock. Daenerys Targaryen stepped out onto the deck, cloak snapping behind her. Dragonstone loomed close enough now that she could see torchlight on the walls, moving like fireflies. She could see the wolf banner's shape, stubborn against the sky. and she could feel Drogon above, circling, patient. Daenerys Targaryen lifted her chin into the wind. If Jon Snow wanted to test her on her own threshold, Jon Snow would learn what it meant to meet the last dragon. The fleet filled the bay like a dark thought made real. Jon Snow watched sails fold, watched anchors drop, watched the water churn with the slow violence of chains biting into sea. The ships were bigger than his, sleeker, made for war and long travel. Their hulls bore the scars of crossing, and their decks bristled with men who stood in disciplined lines. And above them, above everything, dragons turned through the sky. Jon Snow had imagined dragons as stories did. Impossible, distant, like gods who had forgotten men existed. The truth was worse and more beautiful. The truth was shadow and scale and the sound of wings beating air into obedience. The truth was fire sleeping behind eyes. 3 of them circled. Drogon was the largest, black as midnight. The others, green and cream gold, moved like blades through cloud, their bodies catching faint light and making it look like the sky was breaking. Along Dragonstone's walls, Jon Snow's men stood with spears and bows, their faces pale beneath furs. Some stared at the dragons as if their minds could not hold the shape. Some stared at the ships, counting, judging. Some stared at the direwolf banner flapping above, as if wondering if that cloth would become their shroud. Davos Seaworth's mouth was tight. "That's a fleet," Davos Seaworth said under his breath. "Not a polite visit." Edison Tollett leaned on the stone beside them, looking up with bleak fascination. "At least if we die," Edison Tollett said, "it'll be spectacular, better than freezing quietly." Jon Snow did not laugh. Jon Snow could feel his heartbeat in his throat. Not fear exactly. Jon Snow had known fear too long for it to surprise him, but a pressure like the air before lightning strikes. Below, in the courtyard, crates were stacked near the hidden passage that led down toward the sea caves. Dragonglass, boxed and ready, men moved with hurried purpose, but Jon Snow could sense the tremor under it. The arrival had turned work into a race. Former holdouts hovered near archways, eyes wide. The boy who had clutched bread before clutched his mother's skirt now, peering out at the ships as if they were monsters. "They'll burn us," one of the holdouts muttered, voice shaking. "They'll burn the whole rock." Davos Seaworth's head snapped toward the man. "Keep that talk to yourself," Davos Seaworth growled. "Fear spreads faster than plague." Jon Snow watched the fleet. Small boats were being lowered. Men in armor moved in controlled patterns. A landing party. Jon Snow knew what discipline looked like. He had led it. He had fought against it. These men moved like soldiers, not raiders. "Your Grace," a sentry said, stepping close, eyes flicking up at the dragons as if expecting them to dive. "Orders." Jon Snow swallowed once. "No arrows," Jon Snow said. "No one looses unless I command it. If any man fires at a dragon, I will hang him myself." The sentry's face tightened, but he nodded and hurried away, spreading the word. Davos Seaworth leaned closer, voice low. "They might not give you the same courtesy," Davos Seaworth warned. Jon Snow's gaze stayed fixed on the water where the small boats cut toward shore. "Then we'll find out what kind of Queen Daenerys Targaryen is," Jon Snow said. Edison Tollett snorted softly. "A kind queen with dragons," Edison Tollett said. "That'll be a sight." Jon Snow turned away from the battlement and walked the wall, checking positions, reading faces. His men tried to stand tall, but Jon Snow saw the telltale signs. Hands gripping too hard, jaws clenched, eyes darting. Dragons did that to people. Dragons made men remember they were meat. Near the lower tower, the direwolf banner snapped again. Jon Snow paused beneath it. The cloth felt like a weight above his head. Sansa Stark's voice echoed in memory. "You are not claiming Dragonstone." Jon Snow had tried to make it a signal, not a statement. But banners were never just cloth. Banners were language, and Jon Snow had spoken loudly without meaning to. "Take it down," Davos Seaworth said suddenly, reading Jon Snow's hesitation. Jon Snow looked at Davos Seaworth. "If I take it down now, Jon Snow said. It looks like fear. It is fear, Davos Seaworth said. And fear is sensible when dragons show up. Jon Snow's mouth tightened. If I take it down now, Jon Snow repeated. It looks like I knew I was wrong. Davos Seaworth's eyes were sharp. Were you wrong? Davos Seaworth asked. Jon Snow looked out at the fleet again. No, Jon Snow said. Not about dragonglass. Not about the dead. Davos Seaworth exhaled hard. Then keep it up, Davos Seaworth said. But be ready for the consequences. Jon Snow turned back toward the gate. The landing party would come up the causeway. That was where the first words would be spoken. That was where the first mistake could become massacre. Jon Snow descended the stairs into the courtyard. The air smelled of smoke and wet stone. Men fell in behind Jon Snow without being told. A small knot of Northmen with swords at their hips and faces set like carved wood. Davos Seaworth walked at Jon Snow's side, one hand near his dagger. Edison Tollet followed, muttering something that might have been a prayer if Edison Tollet had ever believed in gods. At the great gate, Jon Snow stopped. The ironwork was shaped like dragons twisting around each other, their tails interlocked. Jon Snow rested a gloved hand against the cold metal. Beyond those doors, Daenerys Targaryen was climbing toward them. Jon Snow drew a slow breath and let it fill his chest, steadying him. The dead were coming. Dragonglass was here. If Jon Snow had to stand in a Dragon Queen's doorway and refuse to burn, Jon Snow would. The gate creaked as Jon Snow's men began to pull it open. And above, the dragons circled, waiting to see whether a wolf would bare its throat. The shore was not sand but dark pebbles and sharp stone, wet underfoot, as if the island refused softness. The air tasted of salt and sulfur. Daenerys Targaryen felt it immediately, the faint warmth rising from beneath the rock, the buried fire that made Dragonstone what it was. Her skin prickled with it, as if the island recognized her blood. The boat scraped against stone. Grey Worm jumped first, boots splashing, then turned and offered a hand not because Daenerys Targaryen needed it, but because Grey Worm could not imagine danger touching her without passing through him. Daenerys Targaryen took the step onto Dragonstone and felt something settle in her chest like a stone. This was her ground, her first true foothold. Missandei followed, then Tyrion Lannister and Varys, their cloaks pulled tight against the wind. Behind them, unsullied soldiers poured out of boats with practiced precision, spears upright, shields gleaming with wetness. Above the cliff line, torches burned along the walls. Figures stood against the sky, fur cloaks, northern silhouettes, men who looked like they belonged to snow and pine, not volcanic rock. They were watching silently, and even from here Daenerys Targaryen could feel their tension like a drawn bowstring. The causeway rose from the shore, narrow and steep, cut into the rock. Stone dragons jutted along the path, their mouths open, their wings flared, as if frozen mid-threat. Rainwater ran down their faces, making them look like they wept for old kings. Daenerys Targaryen began to climb. Each step up the causeway pulled her farther from the sea and deeper into memory. She had never walked this path before, yet it felt like a story her bones had known. Above, the castle's gates waited, black and carved, as if the rock itself had been taught to hate intruders. Drogon swept low, his wings beating air into order. The sound made unsullied spears twitch ever so slightly. The northerners on the walls did not move, but Daenerys Targaryen saw heads tilt upward, tracking the dragon's shadow with instinctive dread. Tyrion Lannister moved closer to Daenerys Targaryen's side, voice pitched low. "If they were planning to ambush you," Tyrion Lannister murmured, "they would not be standing openly on the walls with torches lit. They would hide." Daenerys Targaryen did not look at Tyrion Lannister. "Or they want me to see them," Daenerys Targaryen said. Varys' voice was smooth. "Either way," Varys said, "they are making a point. They are saying, 'We are here.' And I am saying," Daenerys Targaryen replied, "This is mine." They climbed higher. The wind strengthened, whipping cloaks and hair. The smell of the sea faded slightly, replaced by the mineral scent of stone warmed from within. Daenerys Targaryen's pulse quickened, not from exertion, but from the nearness of confrontation. At the top of the causeway, the great gate stood partly open, torchlight spilling out. Unsullied formed into disciplined lines behind Daenerys Targaryen, their shields overlapping, a wall of bronze and quiet death. Grey Worms stepped forward, scanning the shadows beyond the gate as if expecting arrows. Daenerys Targaryen stepped through first. Inside the courtyard, the air was warmer than outside, and Daenerys Targaryen could see why. Fires had been lit. Not the grand roaring hearths of a settled court, but practical flames, the kind men made when they intended to occupy, not to visit. Crates were stacked near one side of the yard. Tools, barrels. It looked less like a conquering army and more like a work camp. Yet above the wall, the direwolf banner still flew. Daenerys Targaryen's gaze rose to it, and the anger returned, crisp and clean. From the far side of the courtyard, a small group approached. Northerners, a handful, no more than a dozen. One walked at the front with a long, dark sword at his hip and a heavy cloak on his shoulders. He moved like a man used to cold and battle, like a man who had been forced to become something other men could follow. Daenerys Targaryen recognized him without ever having seen him. The shape of him matched the rumors. Jon Snow stopped a few paces away. Torchlight caught his face. Dark hair, pale skin, eyes that were not pleading and not arrogant, only tired and fixed. Beside Jon Snow stood an older man with a weathered face, watchful eyes. Davos Seaworth, Daenerys Targaryen realized, from Tyrion Lannister's earlier words, the Onion Knight. Behind Jon Snow, other men watched with hands near weapons, tense as wolves in unfamiliar territory. Daenerys Targaryen stood still. Grey Worm's presence at her shoulder was a promise of violence held in check. For a long heartbeat, no one spoke. The only sounds were crackling torches and wind tugging banners above. Then Daenerys Targaryen lifted her chin. "Who are you?" Daenerys Targaryen said. "To raise your banner on my walls?" Jon Snow felt the weight of every gaze like stones stacked on his shoulders. Daenerys Targaryen's presence filled the courtyard in a way armor never could. She was not tall, yet the air seemed to arrange itself around her. Her white blonde hair was braided back, and her eyes were dark and bright with contained fire. A queen, Jon Snow thought, not because anyone had said it, but because the world behaved as if she were. Behind Daenerys Targaryen stood Tyrion Lannister, smaller than Jon Snow expected, his face intent. Varys stood like a quiet shadow, hands folded, eyes measuring. Grey Worm's stare was hard and direct, the stare of a soldier who would kill without hesitation if ordered. Jon Snow kept his hands visible, away from Longclaw's hilt. Davos Seaworth did not. Davos Seaworth's fingers hovered near a dagger as if the blade might leap on its own. "My name is Jon Snow," Jon Snow said, voice steady. "I came for dragonglass." Daenerys Targaryen's expression did not change. "You came for dragonglass," Daenerys Targaryen repeated, "and you thought you would claim Dragonstone to take it." "I did not claim it," Jon Snow said. The words sounded thin in the face of the banner above them. Jon Snow forced himself to keep going. "I needed a place to mine it. The dead are coming, and dragonglass." "The dead?" Daenerys Targaryen said, and there was a flicker there, the briefest tightening around her eyes. Not belief, not yet. Something closer to irritation at being asked to entertain another man's story. "I have heard your rumors." "They are not rumors," Jon Snow said. "I have fought them." Grey Worm's hand tightened on his spear. Daenerys Targaryen's gaze slid briefly to the crates stacked near the wall. Tools, work, evidence that Jon Snow's presence here was not a feast of conquest. Then Daenerys Targaryen's eyes returned to Jon Snow sharper. "You are the king in the north," Daenerys Targaryen said. Jon Snow did not deny it. "I am," Jon Snow said. "You stand in my home," Daenerys Targaryen said. "With your men, with your banner, and you tell me you have not claimed it." Jon Snow swallowed. "I raised it so my ships could find the cove," Jon Snow said. so I could get dragonglass north quickly." Tyrion Lannister made a small sound, half amusement, half warning. "Banners do tend to communicate rather loudly," Tyrion Lannister murmured. Jon Snow's eyes flicked to Tyrion Lannister, then back. "I was not thinking of politics," Jon Snow said. "I was thinking of survival." Daenerys Targaryen took one step forward. The Unsullied behind her shifted, a ripple of metal and discipline. "And I am thinking of both," Daenerys Targaryen said. "You will lower your banner. You will leave my castle. If you need dragonglass, you will ask me. You will not take." Jon Snow felt a cold frustration rise in him, a familiar feeling. The world demanding courtesy while it burned. "If I had waited to ask," Jon Snow said, "the dead would be no farther away, and you would have arrived and claimed the island and you would have begged," Daenerys Targaryen finished, voice sharp as a blade. "You would have bent the knee, and you would have asked your queen for what you needed." The word queen hit like a gauntlet thrown. Davos Seaworth's voice broke in, rough with anger. "Your Grace," Davos Seaworth said, speaking to Daenerys Targaryen with the title as if it cost him. "Begging pardon, but Jon Snow is trying to save his people. All your people, too, if what he says is true." Daenerys Targaryen's eyes flicked to Davos Seaworth. "And who are you?" Daenerys Targaryen asked. "To speak for him?" Davos Seaworth straightened, chin lifting despite himself. "Davos Seaworth," Davos Seaworth said. "I served Stannis Baratheon. I served the North. I served the living." The name Stannis Baratheon made Daenerys Targaryen's face tighten with old contempt and old sorrow. Another would-be king. Another man burned by ambition. Tyrion Lannister stepped forward slightly, palms open. "Your Grace," Tyrion Lannister said to Daenerys Targaryen. "Perhaps we begin with fewer blades in our voices." Jon Snow did not bring an army. Jon Snow brought miners. Daenerys Targaryen did not look away from Jon Snow. "Jon Snow brought a crown," Daenerys Targaryen said. Jon Snow's mouth tightened. "The crown was given," Jon Snow said. "I did not cross the sea to take what was yours. I came because my people will die without dragonglass. And you believe you can do whatever you want because you fear death," Daenerys Targaryen said. Jon Snow felt something break loose in his chest, something raw. "I fear the death of everyone," Jon Snow said. "Not my own." For a heartbeat, the courtyard stilled. Even the torches seemed to pause in their flicker. Daenerys Targaryen held Jon Snow's gaze. The anger was still there, but Jon Snow saw something else now too. A calculation. A queen deciding whether this man was an enemy to be crushed or a tool to be used. Daenerys Targaryen spoke, voice controlled. "You will come inside," Daenerys Targaryen said. "You will explain what you claim to have seen. And you will explain why you thought it wise to set your wolf in my dragon's nest." Jon Snow nodded once. "I will," Jon Snow said. Grey Worm's eyes narrowed, displeased that words were being granted space where spears could end it. Daenerys Targaryen turned slightly toward the hall. "Tyrion Lannister," Daenerys Targaryen said. "You will listen. Varys, you will listen. Missandei, you will listen." Daenerys Targaryen's gaze returned to Jon Snow for the final warning. "And Jon Snow," Daenerys Targaryen said, "understand this. Dragonstone is mine. Your presence here is tolerated only because Tyrion Lannister is begging me to use words before fire." Jon Snow's voice was quiet. "And because you don't want to burn the wrong people," Jon Snow said. A flash of heat crossed Daenerys Targaryen's face. "Careful," Daenerys Targaryen said. Jon Snow did not look I am," Jon Snow said. Daenerys Targaryen moved toward the hall. The Unsullied followed in precise formation, their footsteps a unified drum. Jon Snow and Davos Seaworth walked after, Jon Snow's men trailing behind like a smaller shadow. Above them, the direwolf banner snapped in the wind, stubborn and loud. And somewhere in the sky, a dragon screamed, as if laughing at the idea that men thought they could negotiate ownership of fire. The painted table waited in its chamber like a memory that refused to die. Daenerys Targaryen stepped into the room and felt her breath catch despite herself. She had imagined this place, had imagined her hand tracing the rivers and mountains as if she could rewrite history with a fingertip. The table was older than she expected. The paint faded, but the shape of Westeros was unmistakable. The Iron Islands, the Reach, Dorne like a spear point. The north sprawled vast and cold, as if it did not care to be contained. A queen's toy, Tyrion Lannister had called it once. Daenerys Targaryen's gaze snagged on the small insult that had followed them here. The direwolf banner, visible through an archway in the hall beyond, its color cutting through the castle's blackness like a bruise. Daenerys Targaryen stopped at the head of the table. Jon Snow stood opposite, torchlight catching the edge of his dark cloak and the pale line of his face. Jon Snow looked like a man bracing against winter, even here in a stone belly warmed faintly by buried fire. Tyrion Lannister took a position slightly behind Daenerys Targaryen, as if ready to catch her if she fell into anger. Missandei stood calm beside Daenerys Targaryen, a steady presence. Varys' eyes moved, watching everyone at once, as if trying to read the future from their breathing. Davos Seaworth hung near the doorway like a guard dog who did not trust any hand not his own. Daenerys Targaryen placed both palms on the table's edge. The wood was cool, the paint rough beneath her fingers. "Speak," Daenerys Targaryen said to Jon Snow. "What dead have you seen?" Jon Snow did not hesitate. "Whites," Jon Snow said. "Men and women brought back by White Walkers. They don't tire. They don't feel pain. Fire slows them, but it doesn't always stop them. Steel doesn't stop them." Daenerys Targaryen's eyes narrowed. "And you expect me to believe this?" Daenerys Targaryen said. "Because you say it." Jon Snow's jaw tightened. "Because I fought them," Jon Snow said. "Because I watched thousands die at Hardhome. Because I have seen a man's eyes turn blue as ice after death and then open again." For a moment, Daenerys Targaryen saw it. A shoreline choked with screaming, dead hands reaching, the sea itself turning into a grave. The image was vivid enough that it felt like memory, not story. That unsettled her more than if Jon Snow had sounded like a liar. Tyrion Lannister leaned forward. "Your Grace," Tyrion Lannister said gently. "Jon Snow is not the sort of man who makes up monsters to impress queens." Daenerys Targaryen's gaze snapped to Tyrion Lannister. "Do not tell me what sort of man Jon Snow is," Daenerys Targaryen said. Tyrion Lannister swallowed his retort and bowed his head slightly. "As you wish," Tyrion Lannister said. Daenerys Targaryen turned back to Jon Snow. "Even if I believe you," Daenerys Targaryen said, "why come here? Why not send a message? Why not kneel and ask for help?" Jon Snow's eyes flicked, briefly, to the carved outline of the North on the table. "Because time," Jon Snow said. "Because the North needed dragonglass yesterday. Because if I waited for letters and courtesies, my people would die while kings argued. And you think yourself above courtesies," Daenerys Targaryen said. Jon Snow's mouth tightened. "I think the dead don't care about them," Jon Snow replied. Davos Seaworth shifted, unable to stay silent. "Your Grace," Davos Seaworth said. If Jon Snow had had a faster way to save his people, Jon Snow would have taken it. "This is the fastest." Daenerys Targaryen's fingers curled on the table. "And dragonglass," Daenerys Targaryen said. "You claim it kills these whites." "It does," Jon Snow said. Jon Snow looked at the table again, then at Daenerys Targaryen. "There's more beneath this castle than I can carry," Jon Snow said. "Enough for all. That's why I came before you, because I feared you would see it as a resource for your war and not for the war that matters." Daenerys Targaryen's eyes flashed. "You think I would ignore an army of the dead?" Daenerys Targaryen said. "To chase a throne?" Jon Snow's voice was quiet, careful. "I don't know you," Jon Snow said. "I know what rulers do when fear and power mix." A bitter heat rose in Daenerys Targaryen's chest. She had been called many things in her life. She had been underestimated, mocked, dismissed. But to be told, here in her own house, that she might be no better than the rulers who had broken the world, It was a sharp wound. "I am not Cersei Lannister," Daenerys Targaryen said, voice cold. Jon Snow held her gaze. "Then prove it," Jon Snow said. The words hung in the air like a thrown knife. Tyrion Lannister inhaled sharply, as if anticipating blood. Missandei's eyes widened, but Missandei did not speak. Varys watched with unnerving calm. Daenerys Targaryen stepped closer to the table, leaning forward. "You will not command me," Daenerys Targaryen said softly. Jon Snow's face did not change. "I'm not trying to command," Jon Snow said. "I'm trying to convince." Daenerys Targaryen looked at the carved north again, the vast white stretch of it. In her mind, she saw the cold, swallowing villages, saw men freezing in armor, saw children with numb fingers. If what Jon Snow said was true, the North would not be the first to die. It would be the first to fall, and then the rest would follow, like dominoes made of bone. "Show me," Daenerys Targaryen said at last. Jon Snow blinked. "Show you what?" Jon Snow asked. "The dragonglass," Daenerys Targaryen said. "Show me the mine. Show me what you have been digging out of my island. If you are telling the truth, then I will decide what is done with it." Davos Seaworth's face tightened. "Your Grace," Davos Seaworth began. Daenerys Targaryen cut Davos Seaworth off with a glance. "I decide," Daenerys Targaryen said. Jon Snow's jaw clenched, but Jon Snow nodded. "Then come," Jon Snow said, "and you'll see why I couldn't it." Daenerys Targaryen straightened. "Grey Worm," Daenerys Targaryen called. Grey Worm appeared in the doorway at once, as if conjured. "Yes," Grey Worm said. "Take men," Daenerys Targaryen ordered. "Not too many. I will not have tunnels filled with spears, but I will not walk into darkness unguarded." Grey Worm bowed his head. "As you command," Grey Worm said. Daenerys Targaryen looked at Jon Snow one more time, her expression unreadable. "Lead," Daenerys Targaryen said. Jon Snow turned toward the door that led down into Dragonstone's belly, and Daenerys Targaryen followed, stepping into the earth as if descending into the throat of her own past. The tunnel smelled like wet stone and sweat and something older, heat pressed into rock, a faint sulfur tang that made Daenerys Targaryen think of dragons sleeping beneath the earth. Torchlight painted everything in gold and shadow. The walls were rough, jagged, scarred by picks. Water dripped steadily from the ceiling, a patient rhythm beneath the echo of footsteps. Jon Snow moved ahead with the certainty of a man who had already memorized the dark. Davos Seaworth stayed close, watching corners. Grey Worm and two Unsullied followed, their footsteps quiet, their spears held in a way that promised control without overt threat. Tyrion Lannister and Missandei came behind Daenerys Targaryen, lantern light catching in Tyrion Lannister's thoughtful eyes. The tunnel widened into a chamber where the air felt warmer, as if a hidden hearth breathed beneath the floor. Miners stood there, faces streaked with soot and sweat, hands raw. They froze as Daenerys Targaryen entered, staring at her as if she were a myth given flesh. Some lowered their heads, some simply watched, their expressions caught between awe and fear. Crates lined the chamber walls, straw spilled from them, and inside, black shards, jagged and glossy, piled like broken stars. Dragonglass. Daenerys Targaryen stepped closer to one crate and reached down. Her fingers closed around a shard. It was lighter than she expected, sharp enough that she felt the threat of it even through calloused skin. It caught the torchlight and threw it back in dark gleams, like ice that remembered fire. Jon Snow's voice was low. "That's only what we've taken so far," Jon Snow said. "There's more in the rock." Jon Snow gestured, and a miner, older, missing a tooth, moved to the wall where a vein of black glass cut through stone. The miner ran a hand over it with reverence. Daenerys Targaryen stared. The vein looked endless, thick as a river, disappearing into darkness. A weapon buried in earth. A gift. A temptation. Tyrion Lannister breathed out slowly. "That is," Tyrion Lannister said, "a lot of very useful sharpness." "Useful," Daenerys Targaryen echoed, her mind racing. Jon Snow lifted his own shard, dagger-sized, and held it up so the torchlight caught its edge. "This kills them," Jon Snow said. "We've tested it. We've seen it work." Daenerys Targaryen's gaze snapped to Jon Snow. "You have proof," Daenerys Targaryen said. It was not a question. Jon Snow's face tightened. "Proof enough for those who were there," Jon Snow said. "Not enough for those who want to doubt." Daenerys Targaryen's fingers tightened around her shard. She imagined spearheads tipped with it, arrowheads, blades. She imagined the Unsullied armed with it, disciplined lines cutting through a mindless swarm. She imagined dragons burning masses while men with dragonglass finished what fire could not. She also imagined Cersei Lannister discovering it existed and sending fleets to take it. "I will not allow this to be stolen again," Daenerys Targaryen said softly. Davos Seaworth's head snapped up. "Stolen?" Davos Seaworth repeated, voice harsh. "Your Grace, my apologies. But Jon Snow is not stealing. Jon Snow is trying to save." Daenerys Targaryen held up a hand, stopping Davos Seaworth's words. "Dragonstone is mine," Daenerys Targaryen said, voice calm in a way that made it more dangerous. "Everything beneath it is mine. I will decide how this is mined and where it goes." Jon Snow's jaw clenched hard enough that Daenerys Targaryen could see it even in torchlight. "If you decide slowly," Jon Snow said, "people die." Missandei's voice was quiet. "Daenerys Targaryen," Missandei said. "Jon Snow is not wrong about time." Daenerys Targaryen's gaze flicked to Missandei, and Daenerys Targaryen felt the tug of the woman's faith, the reminder of who Daenerys Targaryen had sworn to be. Not the kind of queen who hoarded salvation. Not the kind of queen who demanded worship before giving help. Daenerys Targaryen exhaled through her nose. "Then I will decide quickly," Daenerys Targaryen said. "Jon Snow will continue mining, under my authority." Jon Snow's eyes narrowed. "And what is your authority worth to the north?" Jon Snow asked. Daenerys Targaryen took one step closer, the shard of dragonglass still in her hand. "My authority is dragons," Daenerys Targaryen said. "My authority is a fleet. My authority is an army that has never broken. And my authority is the Iron Throne that was taken from my family. I will have it." Jon Snow did not flinch. "If the dead win," Jon Snow said, "the Iron Throne will sit in a world of corpses." Daenerys Targaryen's eyes held Jon Snow's, and for a moment there was a strange recognition. Two people who had both been forced into leadership by fire and blood, both exhausted, both unwilling to admit fear. Tyrion Lannister stepped forward quickly, voice bright with urgency, trying to turn collision into compromise. "Your Grace," Tyrion Lannister said, "we can have both. Dragonglass goes north. It arms Jon Snow's people, and in return, Jon Snow hears you.
Jon Snow concédé alliance.
Later, when this apocalypse is less immediate." Grey Worm's expression tightened at Tyrion Lannister's casual use of the word apocalypse, but Grey Worm said nothing. Daenerys Targaryen looked at the miners again. Their eyes flicked between Daenerys Targaryen and Jon Snow, between dragon and wolf, as if choosing which doom was less immediate. Daenerys Targaryen spoke, voice measured. "Dragonglass will be shipped north," Daenerys Targaryen said. "Under my banners, my ships, my accounting. No more hidden coves. No more banners of other houses on my walls." Jon Snow's mouth tightened. "And if I refuse?" Jon Snow asked. Daenerys Targaryen lifted her shard of dragonglass slightly, letting the torchlight catch its edge. "Then you are not here to mine," Daenerys Targaryen said. "You are here to challenge me, and I will treat you as I treat all who challenge me." The chamber seemed to shrink, the air thickening with unsaid threats. Jon Snow stared at Daenerys Targaryen. Davos Seaworth's hand hovered near his dagger. Grey Worm's fingers tightened on his spear. Tyrion Lannister held his breath like a man waiting to see if a spark would meet dry straw. Then Jon Snow exhaled. Slow. "We keep mining," Jon Snow said, "and the dragonglass goes north. That is what matters." Daenerys Targaryen's eyes narrowed. "And the banner," Daenerys Targaryen said. Jon Snow's gaze flicked away, just once, a small betrayal of reluctance. The banner comes down, Jon Snow said quietly. Daenerys Targaryen watched Jon Snow's face, searching for mockery, for resentment, for the seed of future rebellion. Daenerys Targaryen found something else, resolve, not submission, a choice made because the alternative killed too many. Daenerys Targaryen nodded once. Good, Daenerys Targaryen said. Daenerys Targaryen dropped the shard back into the crate. Clacked against other pieces like broken teeth. As they turned to leave, Daenerys Targaryen's lantern light caught something carved into the tunnel wall beyond the mining marks. Older scratches, symbols half-worn by time. A spiral shape, a line of figures, something that made Daenerys Targaryen's skin prickle. Daenerys Targaryen paused, staring. Jon Snow noticed. What is it? Jon Snow asked. Daenerys Targaryen did not answer immediately. Daenerys Targaryen felt, briefly, as if the stone watched back. Then Daenerys Targaryen turned away. Some mysteries could wait. Queens survived by choosing which darkness to stare into. Daenerys Targaryen brought Jon Snow to the dragons because Daenerys Targaryen needed to remind the world, and perhaps herself, what power looked like. Words could be twisted, agreements could be broken, but dragons were absolute. Dragons were the truth that did not care about banners. The courtyard where the dragons roost was open to the sky, ringed by black stone. The air smelled of smoke and damp. The ground was stained in places where fire had scorched it long ago and again more recently. Drogon was already there, perched like a living fortress, wings folded, claws dug into stone. Smoke curled from Drogon's nostrils in slow, lazy ribbons. Rhaegal and Viserion prowled near the walls, restless, their tails dragging, their heads lifting as if tasting the air for threat. Jon Snow entered the courtyard with deliberate calm, though Daenerys Targaryen could see the tension in Jon Snow's shoulders, the way Jon Snow's hand hovered too close to the sword at his hip. Davos Seaworth looked like a man stepping into a storm. Tyrion Lannister looked like a man stepping into a nightmare he had talked himself into. Grey Worm and Unsullied held position at the archways, spears angled, ready. Daenerys Targaryen stepped forward first, letting the dragons see her, letting them scent her presence and settle. Drogon's head tilted slightly, Drogon's eyes fixed on Daenerys Targaryen with a possessive intelligence that made men feel like cattle. Daenerys Targaryen turned, looking at Jon Snow. "You came into my home," Daenerys Targaryen said, voice carrying in the open air. "You want me to trust you, so you will see what you challenge." Jon Snow's face remained steady. "I'm not here to challenge you," Jon Snow said. Daenerys Targaryen's mouth tightened. "You stood beneath my dragon's stone and raised your wolf," Daenerys Targaryen said. "That is a challenge whether you intended it or not." Jon Snow said nothing. Daenerys Targaryen lifted a hand slightly, palm outward, a silent signal to the dragons that there was no prey yet. Drogon's wings flexed, and the gust made cloaks snap. The sound alone was enough to make a weaker man fall to his knees. Jon Snow did not move. Tyrion Lannister swallowed hard. "Jon Snow," Tyrion Lannister murmured, voice tight. "If you were thinking of running, now might be a good time to remember you can't outrun a dragon." Jon Snow's eyes flicked to Tyrion Lannister briefly, then back to Daenerys Targaryen. "I'm not running," Jon Snow said. Daenerys Targaryen watched Jon Snow carefully. Fear made men do foolish things. Pride made them do worse. Jon Snow stood with a kind of grim acceptance that was neither. It unsettled Daenerys Targaryen more than panic would have. Drogon lowered his head slightly, smoke curling thicker, the dragon's gaze sliding from Daenerys Targaryen to Jon Snow. Daenerys Targaryen felt a surge of possessive anger at that, irrational and sharp. Drogon was hers. Everything here was hers. The dragon's attention should not wander. Then Rhaegal moved. The green dragon's head lifted, nostrils flaring. Rhaegal's eyes fixed on Jon Snow with a focus that made Daenerys Targaryen's skin prickle. Rhaegal took a slow step closer, talons clicking on stone. Grey Worm's spear shifted. Unsullied tensed. Davos Seaworth sucked in a breath like a man about to shout a warning. Daenerys Targaryen lifted a hand, commanding stillness. "No," Daenerys Targaryen said softly, not to Jon Snow but to her soldiers. "Hold." Rhaegal continued forward, deliberate. Jon Snow did not back away. Jon Snow's shoulders tightened, but Jon Snow's feet stayed planted. Rhaegal lowered his massive head until the dragon's snout was close to Jon Snow's chest. The air around Rhaegal smelled of warm scales and smoke. Rhaegal's breath washed over Jon Snow, making Jon Snow's cloak flutter. Daenerys Targaryen watched, heart pounding. Dragons did not approach strangers without reason. Dragons did not lower their heads to men unless they meant to bite. And yet Rhaegal did not bite. Rhaegal sniffed once, slow, then nudged Jon Snow's shoulder lightly, almost like a curious horse. Jon Snow flinched, just a fraction, then held still again. Daenerys Targaryen's mouth went dry. Tyrion Lannister's eyes widened with something like astonished delight. "Well," Tyrion Lannister whispered, "that is new." Davos Seaworth stared as if the world had cracked. "What in seven hells?" Davos Seaworth muttered. Jon Snow's hand lifted, hesitant, as if Jon Snow could not decide whether the act would be suicide or miracle. Jon Snow's fingers hovered, then touched one of Rhaegal's scales, just the edge, a brush. Rhaegal did not recoil. Daenerys Targaryen felt something cold slip through the heat in her chest. A thought she did not want. A possibility she had never allowed herself to imagine. Dragons did not belong to everyone. Dragons belonged to her, unless Daenerys Targaryen cut the thought off like severing a rope before it could pull her overboard. Rhaegal lifted his head, looking at Jon Snow with unsettling calm, then turned slightly away as if satisfied. Drogon watched all of it, eyes narrowing, possessive anger rippling through the great beast's posture. Viserion hissed softly, restless. Daenerys Targaryen stepped forward, forcing her voice steady. "Enough," Daenerys Targaryen said. The dragons' heads turned toward Daenerys Targaryen at the word, their focus snapping back like trained blades. Daenerys Targaryen looked at Jon Snow, searching Jon Snow's face for understanding, for knowledge, for deceit. Jon Snow looked as shaken as Daenerys Targaryen felt. Jon Snow's eyes were wide with disbelief, Jon Snow's breath visible in the courtyard air despite the warmth. "You've never seen dragons," Daenerys Targaryen said, watching Jon Snow carefully. "No," Jon Snow said quietly. "Not like this." Daenerys Targaryen's eyes narrowed. "And yet Rhaegal thinks otherwise," Daenerys Targaryen said. Jon Snow swallowed. "I don't know why," Jon Snow said. Tyrion Lannister let out a slow breath, voice light as if trying to keep panic from tasting the air. "Perhaps Rhaegal simply has excellent taste in northerners," Tyrion Lannister said. Daenerys Targaryen ignored Tyrion Lannister. Daenerys Targaryen's gaze stayed locked on Jon Snow. Something had happened here that Daenerys Targaryen could not name. Something that threatened to turn a political problem into something far more dangerous. Daenerys Targaryen had come to Dragonstone expecting to take a castle. Instead, Daenerys Targaryen had found a wolf standing too comfortably near Dragonfire. Night settled over Dragonstone like a cloak pulled tight. In a small solar that smelled faintly of smoke and damp stone, Daenerys Targaryen sat at a table too small for the weight of decisions pressed onto it. Candles flickered, their flames bending slightly with drafts that slipped through old cracks. The castle was quiet around them, but not sleeping. Daenerys Targaryen could hear distant footsteps, unsullied patrols, northern boots, the uneasy movement of two forces sharing walls that did not yet belong to peace. Tyrion Lannister spoke first, unable to hold back. "Your Grace," Tyrion Lannister said. "Whatever that was in the courtyard, do not," Daenerys Targaryen said sharply. Tyrion Lannister stopped, lips pressing together, then tried again with more care. "Your Grace," Tyrion Lannister said. "Jon Snow may be a valuable ally. Jon Snow has the loyalty of the North. Jon Snow has fought the dead. If the dead are real, and I suspect they are because the world is determined to become more horrifying every year, then Jon Snow is one of the few living men who has experience we cannot buy. Grey Worm's eyes were cold. Jon Snow is in Daenerys Targaryen's castle, Grey Worm said. Jon Snow raised his banner. Jon Snow refused to kneel. Jon Snow is disrespect. Daenerys Targaryen's fingers tightened around the stem of a cup she had not drunk from. Yes, Daenerys Targaryen said quietly. Jon Snow is all of that. Missandei leaned forward slightly, voice gentle. Jon Snow also agreed to lower the banner, Missandei said. Jon Snow agreed to mine the dragonglass under Daenerys Targaryen's authority so shipments can continue. Jon Snow chose saving people over pride. Daenerys Targaryen's jaw tightened.
Pride.
She knew pride. Pride had kept her alive. Pride had kept her moving when weakness would have broken her. Pride had also killed men in her path when she had mistaken it for justice. Varys' voice slid in, smooth. Jon Snow is loved, Varys said. That is not a judgment. It is a danger. Loved men gather banners without trying. Loved men become symbols. Daenerys Targaryen's eyes snapped to Varys. And you think Jon Snow intends to become my symbol? Daenerys Targaryen said. Or my rival? Varys spread his hands slightly. Intention is less important than outcome, Varys said. If Jon Snow is truly honorable, Jon Snow may not seek a crown beyond the one already forced onto him. But honor does not prevent other people from using Jon Snow's name, or Jon Snow's blood, or Jon Snow's story. The word blood made Daenerys Targaryen's stomach tighten. Remembering Rhaegal's strange calm, Daenerys Targaryen forced her face to remain still. Tyrion Lannister rubbed at his temple. We are not discussing whether Jon Snow will steal your throne in a decade, Tyrion Lannister said. We are discussing whether the dead will eat everyone within a year. Grey Worm's gaze did not soften. Daenerys Targaryen came to take the Iron Throne, Grey Worm said. Daenerys Targaryen cannot take the Iron Throne if Daenerys Targaryen is dragged into Northern War. Daenerys Targaryen's throat tightened. That was the truth that burned behind all the other truths. Dragonstone was not just a homecoming. Dragonstone was a staging ground. Every delay gave Cersei Lannister time to fortify, to lie, to poison the realm against Daenerys Targaryen. And yet, if Jon Snow spoke truth, delay was not the real danger. Ignorance was. Daenerys Targaryen looked at Tyrion Lannister. You believe Jon Snow? Daenerys Targaryen said. Tyrion Lannister hesitated, then nodded. Yes, Tyrion Lannister said. Not because I trust kings, because I trust desperation. Jon Snow is not here for gold. Jon Snow is here for something no one wants to believe exists. Varys inclined his head. My little birds have whispered of strange things in the north, Varys said. Villages gone quiet, men disappearing, cold that lingers even when it should break. I did not know what to make of it. Now, perhaps Jon Snow is giving shape to the rumor. Daenerys Targaryen leaned back, candlelight catching in her hair. Then I will require proof, Daenerys Targaryen said. Missandei's brows knit. Proof? Missandei asked. The dragonglass. The dragonglass proves nothing except that the world hides sharp stones beneath my feet, Daenerys Targaryen said. Jon Snow wants me to shift my war, to lend ships, men, dragons. Jon Snow wants me to believe in an enemy I cannot see. If I am to move my power north, I will not do it on faith alone. Tyrion Lannister nodded slowly. Then ask Jon Snow to show you, Tyrion Lannister said. Bring you something, a white proof in chains. Grey Worm's expression tightened with disgust. Bring dead into Daenerys Targaryen's castle, Grey Worm said.
Danger.
It would be dangerous, Tyrion Lannister agreed, but so is everything else. Daenerys Targaryen stared at the candle flames, watching them bend and steady and bend again. Daenerys Targaryen thought of the people she had freed, the city she had burned, the men she had judged. Daenerys Targaryen thought of how easily righteousness could turn into cruelty when fueled by certainty. Daenerys Targaryen did not want to be wrong about the dead. Daenerys Targaryen also did not want to be the queen who ignored the world's end because she was busy taking a chair made of swords. Daenerys Targaryen's voice was quiet. "Tomorrow," Daenerys Targaryen said, "Jon Snow will meet me again. Jon Snow will tell me how Jon Snow intends to prove this threat. And Jon Snow will remove the direwolf from my walls." Tyrion Lannister exhaled slowly, relieved that fire had not been chosen tonight. "And the dragonglass shipments?" Tyrion Lannister asked. "They continue," Daenerys Targaryen said. "Under my watch." Grey Worm's jaw tightened. "And Jon Snow?" Grey Worm asked. Daenerys Targaryen looked toward the window where darkness pressed close. Somewhere out there, dragons slept. Somewhere inside this castle, Jon Snow slept, if Jon Snow could sleep, carrying what Jon Snow carried. "Jon Snow stays," Daenerys Targaryen said softly, "until I decide Jon Snow can be trusted, or until Jon Snow becomes too dangerous to keep close." Missandei's eyes held Daenerys Targaryen's for a long moment. "Daenerys Targaryen," Missandei said quietly, "do not let fear make a prisoner out of a potential ally." Daenerys Targaryen's mouth tightened. "Fear keeps queens alive," Daenerys Targaryen said. "And love keeps queens remembered," Missandei replied, voice gentle but firm. Daenerys Targaryen said nothing. Daenerys Targaryen watched the candle flame and wondered which of those things would matter when the dead arrived. The room Jon Snow had been given was not grand. Dragonstone did not offer comfort easily. The stone walls were carved into curves that made shadows gather in odd places, and the wind threaded through cracks with a low whistle that sounded like distant voices. A small fire burned in the hearth, stubborn and bright against damp air. Jon Snow sat at a rough table with a piece of parchment, a quill, and a pot of ink that smelled sharp and bitter. Jon Snow stared at the blank parchment for a long time before writing, as if words were another enemy that needed choosing carefully. Davos Seaworth stood near the door, arms crossed, listening to the castle beyond. "Daenerys Targaryen's men are everywhere," Davos Seaworth murmured. "Quiet as cats. Makes me itch." Jon Snow dipped the quill and began to write. "Sansa stark. Dragonstone is not empty. Daenerys Targaryen has arrived. I have agreed to mine dragonglass under her authority so shipments can continue. I am alive. Do not trust her easily. Do not make enemies we cannot afford. Arm the north as quickly as possible. The dead will not wait." Jon Snow paused, the quill hovering. Jon Snow wanted to write more. Jon Snow wanted to tell Sansa Stark about the dragons, about how the air had changed when they moved overhead, about the way even brave men looked small beneath wings. Jon Snow wanted to tell Sansa Stark that Daenerys Targaryen's anger was a storm held behind eyes, and that Tyrion Lannister was trying to guide it away from the north. Jon Snow also wanted to tell Sansa Stark something Jon Snow could not explain. That one of the dragons had looked at Jon Snow as if recognizing something. Jon Snow did not write that. Not yet. Some truths were too strange to send on raven wings. Jon Snow rolled the parchment and tied it, then rose and stepped to the narrow window. Outside, torchlight moved along the battlements. The air was cold, and the sea beyond the cliffs was black and endless, reflecting only a thin sliver of moon. On the highest tower, a new banner rose, three-headed dragon, red against black. Targaryen. Below it, Jon Snow saw men lowering the direwolf banner. The cloth came down slowly, the wolf folding into itself, its head disappearing first as if bowing. Jon Snow's chest tightened. Davos Seaworth watched it too, face grim. "Better cloth than heads," Davos Seaworth said quietly. Jon Snow nodded, though the agreement tasted like iron. In the sky, a massive shadow passed over moonlit cloud. Drogon, silent, the dragon's wings blotting starlight as if the night itself made room. Jon Snow turned away from the window and handed the message tube to a man waiting near the door. The raven fluttered uneasily on its perch, sensing storm even in warm room. "Send it," Jon Snow said. "Fast." The man nodded and left. Jon Snow sat again, rubbing a hand over Jon Snow's face. Weariness settled on Jon Snow like a second cloak. Jon Snow had wanted dragonglass. Jon Snow had gotten it. Jon Snow had also gotten a queen who could burn armies with a word and who had every reason to see Jon Snow as a threat. Davos Seaworth stepped closer, lowering Davos Seaworth's voice. "You did right," Davos Seaworth said. "You kept the mining going. You kept her from burning everyone. That's a win." "It doesn't feel like a win," Jon Snow said. "No," Davos Seaworth admitted. "Wins rarely do. Not until after." A sudden commotion echoed from the corridor outside. Running feet, a shouted order, the scrape of boots on stone. Davos Seaworth's posture changed instantly, hand dropping toward Davos Seaworth's dagger. The door opened hard. A northern scout rushed in, breath ragged, face pale. "Your Grace," the scout said, voice shaking. "Ships." Jon Snow's head snapped up. "Daenerys Targaryen's fleet is already here," Jon Snow said. "Not those," the scout panted. "Different sails, farther out, moving fast, dark hulls. They weren't there at dusk." Davos Seaworth's face tightened. "Ironborn," Davos Seaworth muttered, the word like a curse. Jon Snow stood, the exhaustion burned away by urgency. "How many?" Jon Snow demanded. The scout swallowed. "Too many to count from the cliff," the scout said, "but enough to make the sea look crowded." Jon Snow's stomach dropped. Another fleet, another threat, another set of teeth closing around this rock. Jon Snow looked at Davos Seaworth. Davos Seaworth's eyes were already calculating, already mapping coves and currents and possibilities. "She'll think it's you," Davos Seaworth said quietly. "Daenerys Targaryen will think you brought them." Jon Snow's jaw clenched. "Then we tell Daenerys Targaryen now," Jon Snow said. Davos Seaworth nodded once. "Aye," Davos Seaworth said. "And pray she listens before she burns first." Jon Snow grabbed Longclaw's hilt and felt the familiar comfort of steel, even though steel would not stop ships or dragons or the dead. Steel was simply something Jon Snow could hold. Outside, the wind moaned through Dragonstone's stones like a warning, and far out on the Black Sea, another set of sails moved toward the island, hungry and unseen in the dark.